Well, John, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this one because you have quite the life experiences and stories. We
There's
met,
plenty.
yeah, I'm sure. We met at a networking event
Yep.
with Matt Schneider, one of his master classes.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, it was awesome. We talked briefly there, and I was like, oh, I got to get you on. And so, something that I do here on the podcast with our platform, and hopefully other podcasts catch on, is I offer veterans, law enforcement, and anybody that has a small business that's served our country in some sort of way to be able to send us products or businesses, apparel, you name it. And it's just a free way of me being able to help the veteran or law enforcement community. So
Awesome.
we got C-State Coffee. He's a recon Marine, got out. So he sends everybody home with a bag of coffee and a couple of cold brews, which are caffeine packs. So just be careful. I would not drink those past like 10 in the morning. And then we got the War Machine, which he's the platoon cigars. He was a Marine, combat Marine, got out, became a cop in Chicago, got shot in the line of duty, him and his partner. A bullet grazed his head. I believe the bullet got lodged in his partner's head. Then he started, now he does cigars. And so I'll make sure you get to go home with that and enjoy some stuff. I had another veteran that just recently sent us some clothes. He's it's God-fearing lifting club, so I'll make sure to see if we got a shirt for you. So,
That'd be awesome.
yeah, so I just try to give back to the community any way we can. I feel like if there was more platforms that were just offering law enforcement, veteran businesses something,
Yes.
I feel like if somebody sees it, wants to order a cigar or some coffee or pick up a shirt from anybody that we help promote, it's just doing our little part. So
Yeah, it's a great
I
thing.
like to send everybody home with a guest, and I got some shirts and hats for you that I just did not grab. So, but man, let's I guess jump into. I guess you just give me a little intro of who you are, and then we're gonna dive into your life because it's a pretty good one.
Sweet, man. Yeah. So John McDaniel, that's me. Grew up in Texas. So
What part?
Central Texas,
Okay.
Stephenville, Texas, primarily. So that's, I would say, most of my childhood was in Stephenville, Texas. So
What's that near for anybody that doesn't know?
for those that don't know, it's really close to. Well, you may know where this is at. You know where Glen Rose, Texas is?
I do know.
Okay, so you know the ranch out there. I actually built the gym when they
Really?
built that ranch.
Really?
I was in college and they called me up and I built everything and built that gym for them.
Really?
So, anyway, it's 30 miles. Stephenville is 30 miles from Glen Rose.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
Central Texas, and for the rest of y'all that don't know where Glen Rose is, it's not too far from Dallas Fort Worth. It's about an hour and a half from Dallas Fort Worth.
Yep.
Grew up there, went to high school there. We'll get into more of that, but went to Tarleton State University. That's where Tarleton is in Stephenville, Texas. Graduated from college, took off, went to Amarillo, law enforcement, and was in law enforcement, had a career there. Met my wife there, Amy, and after law enforcement, moved up to Dallas Fort Worth area, Weatherford, Texas, and was up there for about a year doing business stuff, business coaching, traveling, speaking at conferences, and then we had met Matt Snyder
Okay.
at an event. We'd come up here to Idaho. Never been to Idaho. I'd watched some weird documentary called Idaho, and I thought it was going to be about potatoes,
Right.
and clearly it was not. It was about mountains. Anyway, got up here, went to this event, and then about 9 months later decided we wanted to move to Idaho.
Really?
So, here we are.
It's a beautiful place.
It is.
It is a beautiful place. It sucks how fast it's growing and developing. We got here right before the boom, and so we thought it was, home. This is our new area, but yeah, it's growing a little fast for us, and so I think we've been looking at maybe getting either out of this area or heading back east. So,
Oh wow.
just too much hustle and bustle. That's why we left where we were when I got out of the military and came here, and then we're like, God, what is going on?
It's happening.
It's happening here too. So yeah. All right, man. Let's start right from the beginning. Kid growing up. How was Texas? Out in that part of the woods.
Texas was good. I mean, my childhood and life, not so much, but Texas was good. Growing up, when I was a kid, starting off, I guess, technically, I was born, I was a stillborn.
Really?
So my real father, hightailed it when I was born. He just left my mother. They lived in a station wagon doing
Really?
drugs. And I was born. I was like 3. Things have changed. I was like 3.5 pounds when I was born. I was born dead.
No kidding.
So challenges right from the get go. You know,
Yep.
right out of the bat. But mom gave me away. Lived still in Texas. Lived with a grandmother that I didn't really know after that. It was my real father's grandmother. 3 years old, she came back and got me. We moved to a new city in Texas, new town in Texas. And then when I was about 5, the stepdad came into life, into our life.
Oh, okay. How did that could go either way, I feel like. You hear those stepdad stories and it was incredible or absolute hell.
Yeah, it was not incredible. It was the moment I met that dude, you know, I just knew. And I think I'd been, even at that age, I'd been through enough kind of strange things that, you know, as kids, I can remember having a sense for this guy. Like, this is not right. My mom had dropped me off at an uncle's from my real father's side. First time I'd met them that I can remember. And she came back 3 months later and she was married. And
Your mom just drops you off at an uncle and comes back 3 months later married.
yeah,
So what's it like living with some strange man? How old are you at this age?
5.
5 years old, dropped off at an uncle you don't even know. Was he married or is just an uncle?
Oh, he was married.
Okay.
He was married, had some kids, and it was actually great.
Okay, so it was a good situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had some cousins that I didn't know. So me and one of my cousins, we were about the same age, and so what we do, we just do what boys do. They lived out in the country, so we were out, you know, chasing wild animals and playing in the mud and all the fun stuff. And then it was just like life changed. You know, got picked up, and from the moment I met that dude, I knew it was
Really?
bad news, just bad. And it started off bad right out of the bat.
So there was no easing into it with him. You know, it was just straight. What was his problem? Drugs, alcohol? I mean,
Both.
both?
Drugs, alcohol, and the guy he came from a really not good family.
Really?
Wealthy family, college education, was an engineer by trade. Although I don't believe I don't think I ever knew he worked. For the longest time, I had no idea what he did.
Really?
I didn't even know he had an education. All he did was drink and do drugs.
Was he abusive?
Oh yeah.
So he take it out on you?
Yeah.
Were you the only child?
No, I had a sister. Have a sister. She's still alive. I don't get to see her. She moved, that uncle that I stayed with. She moved in with him and his family when I was about 7. So she was gone and out of the picture from that. And she was 4 years older. She's 4 years older than I am. So yeah, I was kind of the
Only child at that point?
But, you know, for looking back in retrospect, and even then, even though I was the younger brother, I was pretty protective. So when the beatings were thrown out, like, I was more than happy to jump in the way.
Really?
Because I just didn't, I mean, I cared for my sister. I didn't want,
Absolutely.
you know, I didn't want that to happen to her. Why not me? So, and then, so shortly after, 2 years later, she's gone. So.
And there was no way for you going with?
No, I mean, I guess not.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was even happening. I just knew, like, hey.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
You know,
7 years old, you don't know.
Like, she's leaving. I'm like, all right.
Cool.
You know, so good for her. But, so yeah.
How long did that continue for?
Till I left when I was 14.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a long time to deal with that.
Yeah.
How big were you at 14? Did you put on any size by that point, or are you still a little kid?
No, 14, I was drinking in bars.
Really?
Yeah, I could.
I guess Texas, yeah, it's probably a common thing out there.
You know, you throw on a cowboy hat, and, you know, a little brush popper, and, you know, cowboy boots, and walking. You know, I was 6'1" and probably about 175 pounds.
How big was your mom's stepdad or your stepdad?
He was about 6'2".
Okay, so he's a bigger dude too.
Yeah, he was a bigger guy, but we got in a little bit of a scuffle right at the end of that.
Yeah.
And when I left, and he didn't make it out
Really?
of that very well.
Really?
So I just saw red. I finally, all that rage and
For
all
sure.
that anger, just, man, it was boiling up, and it finally just came out.
I could imagine. Yeah, it's a long. I mean, it's just your whole childhood of dealing with a drug addict, drunk stepdad that's putting hands on you. I mean, that's why I was asking. I was wondering how long it was going to take to when it came to a head.
Yeah, that was it. It just finally. I mean, I was already working. I've been working since I was 8. You know, cleaning floors in Kmart. God just paid me cash. I'd go in the evenings and nights.
Really?
When they closed down.
8 years old.
Yeah, buffing floors. Little things. They told me, like, if you find something small in the aisle, you can just pick it up and keep it. And so there were little things like that was kind of exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And I would help him out at Bruner Chevrolet. They'd also clean the floors there in the evenings and stuff like that. So
Were you able to keep your money, or was this coming back and like helping support your mom?
I would keep as much as I could, but generally they'd find it.
Okay.
And it was gone.
Yeah.
So
Drugs and alcohol.
yeah.
That sucks. But at least you're grinding it out at such a young age.
Oh yeah. I mean, I had to get shoes, I had to get clothes, I had to get stuff that I needed. And, there were times where I remember they'd be gone for 2 weeks. I wouldn't even see them for 2 weeks. I was 9 years old.
Really?
And so what do? You gotta try to eat. You gotta try to survive. You play little games.
God, 2 weeks left alone at 9 years old.
Yeah.
That is wild to me.
Yeah. It's not strange to me when people say it's weird. I mean, I do understand that now, but at the time it was just
life.
Just life.
I mean, you look at any of these kids that grow up in absolute horrible conditions. They don't know any better. I mean, you look at these kids. When I was in Afghan, we would see these kids. I used to call home, and it would tear me up because there was this road that we would drive, and I mean, it was feet thick of sludge. They would just walk out every day and dump their feces and trash along the side of this road. And every day when we leave our compound, I mean, these little girls would be in it, and they're up to their knees just digging through sludge, just trying to find anything they could use or burn or anything. And so, but that was their life, and I try to explain that. That's why I feel it's so important for people to be able to travel and see how everybody lives, and so then you know how good you really have it.
Right. Yeah, and we really do. My story is by far not even close to the worst thing.
Oh, for sure.
I'm grateful for what I went through. Made me who I am today.
Absolutely.
Wasn't fun at the time, but it helps me now.
It was setting some pretty heavy foundations, I could imagine, at that age.
Yeah.
So 14, you get into it with your stepdad, and where did you go from there?
So we had actually moved from Stephenville.
Okay.
We had moved about 6-8 months before. We moved out to a little tiny town out in the middle of central Texas called Mullen, Texas. Lived out in the middle of nowhere, and so I threw everything I could in a bag, and I don't know where it came from. I had an old green Army duffel bag that I found and all this stuff. Stuffed it with everything I could, threw it on my back, and hitchhiked back to Stephenville.
Really?
That's where I knew I was familiar.
It's home, yeah.
Yeah. And I lived on the streets for a while.
Really?
I had about I remember exactly. I had about $514 and I don't know, some odd change in cash, and hiked back. The city park in Stephenville had a rec center, like most small town places. In that rec center, it's a basketball court, and they have a stage on one end. Well, the stage has stairs that go down around the back, and on the outside, there's stairs that go down to like a basement area.
Okay.
Well, the back of that stage, there are windows, and you could go in there during the day and play basketball, do whatever you wanted, and then they close it up at night and leave. There's no alarms to that place, it's whatever. So I'd unlock those windows in the back, and then crawl in. You can go down those stairs, and I just lift myself up and crawl in. I could sleep in the rec center, and they had little mats. Lay out a mat. I bought a little alarm clock, a little wind-up alarm clock. Set the alarm, get up, crawl out the window. They had showers they'd open up, so I'd go shower, clean up, and take off.
You're doing this at 14?
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn, man. Did you go back to Walmart or Kmart and continue to work, or were you just on the streets?
No, I was on the streets, but I was looking for work. I mean, anything I could do, I'd go around and find whatever I could find. I re-enrolled myself back into school.
Really?
There.
Good for you.
And I don't know how they do things now, but back then, I mean, we're talking early 90s. And I'd already been in the school system. So I just went back. I was like, hey, I'm back. My parents are busy.
Yep.
So nothing's changed.
And this is small town living too. So, I mean, I get
they're
it.
just like, oh, okay. Yeah, cool.
Welcome back.
Great. Have them sign this. Yeah.
Sign it. Good to bring it back to them.
Yeah, just take it back. So it's not that big of a deal. So in the meantime, I'm looking for work. I'm trying to find work.
Yeah.
And I kept going to close by the park, which, that's home, is a place, Sonic Drive-In. And it was kind of in between school and the park. And so I kept hounding them, like, hey, man, just give me a job. Finally, one day I walk in, and the guy's like, fine, you got a job. That's cool. Hired me, and I worked there for a pretty good while. But so I'd walk to work, or I'd walk to school, walk back after school, go to work till, as long as they'd let me, midnight. I'd close as often as possible, work the weekends, and then walk back to the park. At night, get a few hours sleep, get up, do it again.
Really? How long did this continue for?
That continued because obviously I'm making some money, and knowing Stephenville, knowing the layout, growing up there, I kind of went to some of those poorer areas of town, and I found this little shack. I mean, the whole thing wasn't any bigger than this room.
Really?
And this old lady, she had a big, nice home that wasn't too far from it, but she was renting it. And I was just honest with her. I just told her, I can't put any bills in my name. I don't even know how that works. But I'm making some money. Can I rent this place from you? So she agreed, and I rented it for $135 a month.
No kidding.
I mean, I showered with the slugs. Literally, there were slugs I'd have to pull out of the shower. I mean, it was nasty, but it was a roof.
Yep.
And it had one little wall heater, little gas wall heater, and it was nice for me. I mean, I was pretty excited.
You're not on the streets.
Yeah, I'm not on the streets. I've got a place to live, and so I lived there for a pretty good while. And she put the bills in her name, turned them on, and I would just pay her whatever the bills came out to.
Really?
And I kept it simple, man. The lights were off, unless I was never there.
Well, and you came from nothing,
Yeah.
So it's easy to transition and not, just get comfortable right away. I mean, you're living at your absolute means of what you need.
Oh yeah, and there was nothing more. I mean, my bed was, I got these bean bags for like $3 a piece, and they're cheap. I mean, the worst bean bags you could find, right? And I took 2 of them, and they were my chairs for one. And then at night, I could just push them together, and I put like a fitted sheet over them.
To hold them together?
And I'd sleep on it, and it was terrible because I'd wake up, my butt would be on the floor, my feet would be in the air, my head would be in the air.
Yeah.
I mean, it was horrible, but you just reposition whatever. But, so it was simple. It was good.
Good for you. I mean, that is, at the time, I'm sure, there's some pretty dark and lonely moments, but
Oh, yeah.
shaping you as what you were going to become as an adult, I mean, it was just laying the foundations that, teaching you the grit, the grind. I mean, you were just pushing through everything at that. That is, and zero help.
Yeah. Not for a long time. I mean, a buddy of mine, his parents found out.
How old at this point?
I guess it'd been a couple years, so I was 16.
So you were doing this you were living in this little house, just sleeping on bean bags, working at Sonic for a couple of years all on your own.
Yeah. And it was
And
great.
going to
Sonic
school.
was great. Yeah, and going to school. And I'd have to walk. And I'll be honest, man, there were some nice people that offered rides. They'd see me walking, and I just wouldn't take them. But there was something in my brain that, I don't know, call it pride. I guess I'll call it pride. I don't even know where it came from, but I was very prideful. I didn't want help for a long time. I felt like, I don't know, I felt like I needed to struggle. Like it was my lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. But so yeah, I walked back and forth, and then a buddy of mine, his parents found out, and they they were like, look, we have the spare room. Just stay with us.
You're done. Get your ass out of there.
Yeah, and they were even like talking like, we're gonna tell somebody if, because technically I wasn't allowed to do that.
No, you're a minor.
Yeah, I'm a minor. And honestly, I didn't even know what the laws were, but I at the time, but I did understand I shouldn't. I mean, I was keeping a secret because
For sure.
I knew I was going to get in trouble in some way, or they were going to try to place me somewhere, which I did not want.
Can you imagine it put in the system?
I know. And I actually tried. I ran away several times when I was a kid. I would show them. I called the police on my parents. They got arrested. They did a raid at the house.
Really?
Found drugs. They got arrested.
Didn't change anything?
Didn't change a thing. The moment they bailed out, because his family was pretty well, they bailed out, right back to the house.
And then the repercussions fell on you?
Absolutely. All the time.
So the system's failing you at that point from the start?
Yeah. And I ran away twice and showed them bruises and
Nothing.
And what they do? Yeah. Wait here. Next thing you know, here comes my parents walking in. They just call them, get in touch with them. They come pick me up, right back, and then
beat your ass again.
Beat me for saying something about it. So for right of the way and saying something.
Well, okay, so that makes sense of why you were a pretty prideful guy and didn't want to say anything because I mean everything had failed you up to that point.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's probably where a lot of that. I mean, I'm just guessing. A lot of that came from was reaching for help, and everything has failed you up to, I mean, your whole entire life. So yeah, sure. I feel like that's probably a good starting point where you were just pretty much middle finger to the world. I got it on my own.
Yeah. I felt like I just had to. Otherwise, who do you trust?
Yeah.
If you can't trust your family, the people who were supposed to be there for you, care about you, love you, all these things, how am I going to trust anybody else? And even for small things, But these people did convince. I mean, they were just wonderful, wonderful family.
Was it a weird transition for you going? And the reason I ask is because you see sometimes where these people in prison, they get so used to living in their confinements or their environment, when they get out, they can't. It's too much for them. Did you? I mean, obviously, after a couple of years, your suck levels clearly raised to living with slugs, sleeping on bean bags, doing it all on your own.
That was better. That was better living than living with my parents.
For sure. So when you went from there to your friend's house, was it a weird adjustment, or you were like, "Oh man, this is amazing"? Do you remember?
It was strange. It was weird, and I felt like a burden the entire time. I felt out of place. It felt like a burden. I felt like, I don't know, like an imposter. It was really, really weird.
So you were more comfortable living on your own?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was there only about a year, and then graduated at 17. And right before I graduated, I got back out on my own. Really? I mean, just because I just felt like a burden. I really did. And I know I wasn't. I'm looking back now. I know I wasn't, but I mean, I paid for my own food. I did everything. They just gave me a roof and a place to sleep and all that. So, and I mean, she cooked meals, and I would eat those meals, but I took care of all of my stuff.
Yep.
And so yeah, it was very weird.
Good for you for staying in school.
Yeah.
During that time, I feel 100% of kids, that would be the last thing on their mind.
It was tough. I actually got kicked out.
Really?
Because they found out I was on my own.
How'd they find out?
They
mail you home, mail a letter home or something?
Well, kind of. Like, I mean, there was, when I get sick, and I was sick. I was having to walk all the time. I'm tired. I'm exhausted.
Malnourished.
Yeah. And so I remember having, I'm writing my own letters of why I'm not at school, because back then that's how it was. I don't even know how they do that nowadays. But
emails.
Oh, is it?
FaceTime.
Yeah, there's none of that.
Yeah.
It was like you just write a letter. Well, they figured it out that I'm writing my own letters, and so the vice principal called me in, and he was going to give me what they called SAC, and it was basically like you got to stay after school and all this stuff. And I'm trying to tell him, like, look, I got to work, like to feed. Like, now that you know the truth, understand I got to work to feed myself. So he started threatening to, like, get people involved, and this is when I was still on my own. and I got super mad, and he just wouldn't listen to me, wouldn't reason. And he had a he had a piece of cake on his desk that somebody had given him, and I grabbed it and smashed it in his face.
Really?
Yeah, probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I was just overwhelmed. I was mad. I was just like, I'm trying to do the right thing, and you're getting in my
And
way.
he's not listening to you either.
No, he's not listening. So, boom, kicked me out of school. That was my junior year, and I didn't know what to do. You know, so I worked. So that was halfway through the semester, and it bothered me. Over the summer, I contacted the school, and I was like, I got to figure out how can I make this right. This was about the time I was going to move in for my senior year.
Okay, to your friend's place.
Yeah. And or right before it, I guess. Anyway, the counselor had been trying to find me. Of course, I don't have a phone. I can't, you know. It turns out she's like, look, I told her what happened. She's like, we're not going to mention any of this. You can make up your credits. You're going to have to do it during a specific time. Get your other credits. You can still graduate with your class. It's going to take a lot of work. So I did it. And that was a big reason I moved in, because I didn't have to work quite as much.
Mm-hmm. Which freed up the time to be able to get your credits up.
Yeah, because I had to do that like either after school or a little bit on the weekends.
Yeah.
To get those credits back. I had a full semester of credits I had to get back. So did that, graduated with my class, and made it happen. So
that is incredible that you stayed in to graduate.
yeah.
You see so many kids that go, the first thing they do is school's gone. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the last thing on their mind. Now,
Yeah.
were you trying to, was it in your head the whole entire time, college, or were you just like, I just need a high school diploma?
I think I was just surviving.
Okay.
Really, just surviving and observing.
Mm-hmm.
I was always observing people and trying to figure out, like, I knew what the life was like that I grew up in, and I knew that was not anything that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just watch people, watch families, watch anyone and everyone I thought was doing something right. Like, how do I act? I wasn't taught basic life skills.
Yeah.
And so I think during that time it was just survival. And I knew this was important. Like, this was a big deal to me, because what else did I have?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have anything else. And I didn't want to live that way. So one step at a time. So, I mean, that was all that was on my, and then it happened. And then I was like, get a job. I'd never been to the dentist in my life.
Man, I didn't even think of that.
In my whole life. I'd never been to the dentist. They didn't take me to the doctor. I think one time when my stepdad rolled the truck on my foot on purpose, he was forced to take me to the doctor.
Oh my God.
It's like stuff like that. So I, immediately following high school, I'm like, well, I can get a better job now.
Mm-hmm.
I can work full time all the time and overtime, whatever, and make money. So I did, and got out, got a job at a factory, and really just focused on that for a pretty good while. I guess maybe about a year.
Just grinded out the work.
Yeah, just grinding out the work, nothing more. I guess really what did it, made me think about it a little more, was at this factory, I moved up really quick in their little scale.
I would say your work ethic was probably one of the top notch guys in there, dealing with you where you've come from.
Right. Yeah, and I had no problem. Work as hard as I could, and then some, because I was always afraid of like something being taken away. And now I'm at a place, like I went to the dentist. I had insurance. I didn't know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
When they asked me, do you want I'm like, what are you talking about? Insurance? What is that? And then they told me I could go to the dentist, and the doctor. And anyway, it was just amazing.
Yeah.
Things like that now I look back and I'm like, I can't believe, like, no one ever even taught me these things. So, but this machine I worked on, it was coated abrasives, sandpaper.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, giant. You think sandpaper? We always think of like small belt sanders or stuff.
You're
like
making
that.
the sheets of
But
it?
I'm making these giant, like this sandpaper, like for cars and stuff. And the machine wasn't very efficient. And the more I looked at the machine, the more I realized like a small thing, one small adjustment here, and it could save probably thousands of dollars in, product, because we're just wasting it. So,
Which every company wants that employee thinking like
right,
that.
and they had a program, like they had a deal that like anything you think of that might improve, write it up, let us know, and we'll come take a look at it. And if we implement it, then you'll get a reward. And of course, I'm thinking, I'll get some money.
Yeah.
So I took it to them. I drew it up the best I could. Went in, and then one day, I didn't hear anything for months. One day, like 6 engineers walk out and introduce themselves. I'll walk them through, they're like, show me this, show me that. Walk them through it. Lo and behold, they did it.
Really?
I mean, it took time. They actually had to, but I ended up getting like 10 grand out of that deal.
Which was probably
nothing compared to what they saved on that.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, for you at that age and that time,
Oh,
10 grand was like hitting the lottery.
Oh yeah, it was just amazing. I mean, I was able to buy a car, and just, and put some money in the bank, and just
Get ahead for once.
Go actually buy some clothes that, weren't secondhand, whatever I could find. So yeah.
If they give you 10 grand, imagine how much that machine saved them.
Oh, I know. Now I know. Back then I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm like the richest man alive.
Yeah, didn't even care. Yeah,
no, I didn't care.
That's how grateful you are that instead of what's the percentage and
no. I was just like, oh my gosh, I felt very privileged to even have the opportunity, that I was given that opportunity.
Yeah.
So yeah, did that.
And then after that, off to college.
Kind of. I started thinking about college. I actually ended up meeting this girl, and we started dating, and I'd been thinking about college, and she was really encouraging me, like, you should. So I went, Tarleton State's right there in town, so I went and applied. Well, they wanted parents' tax information. I mean, I ain't got no money. I've got to have financial aid. But they wanted parents' tax information. They want all this stuff that I can't provide. And so I just told them that, like, I can't give you any of this. And they're like, well, you've got to get independent status. So I had to fight for 3 years to gain independent status.
Is that through the state or through the school system?
Through the I can't even tell you. I think it's through the state, like, for the financial aid.
Okay.
Part of everything.
Okay.
So they wanted 3 letters from like upstanding citizens in the community, along with some other stuff. But that was the main thing. So it was like they had to be like a business owner, doctor, attorney, somebody, mayor, somebody well established who could basically vouch for my character. And so, I didn't just go out and I didn't even think about it. I didn't just go out and go up to business owners, but like, hey, can you do this for me? I actually went out and started getting involved in the community, getting involved. And so I started going and meeting professors, and I would just do different things to get my foot in different doors, just to meet people and volunteer time a little bit here and there when I could. So about 3 years went by, and I had established pretty well, just with people in general. And so, and that's when I finally got the letters and got in.
Really? How'd that feel?
It felt great.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew, I assumed I knew what I wanted to do right away.
Which was what was your first thoughts of going to college? Like, what did you want to do then?
I wanted to be an attorney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really? Good. You're built different.
Well,
your mindset is completely opposite of what I would guess any kid in your situation would have taken that path.
There was something that happened when I was a little bit younger. I was on my own at the time. I was out at a friend's house, a little ways out in the country, county road out there, paved county road, but we're standing outside of his house, and it's like I said, it's out in the middle of nowhere, but it's kind of close to the road, and I'm kicking in the dirt, and long story short, I see this. It's a plastic toy revolver with no barrel on it, and I just have it in my hand, and I'm knocking the dirt off of it. I kind of kicked it out of the ground, and we're just talking. There's three of us talking, and I point it across the road at this bird that's on a fence post across the road that there's nobody on while a truck drives by. I don't think twice about it. Throw the thing down, whatever, go about my business. Well, about 5 months later, I run into him again. He's like, hey, these guys came by where they were asking about this incident, and I couldn't think of anything. He's like, the only thing I could think of was that day you were out here. And I showed him the little toy thing. He said, in fact, I pulled it back in the house in case you need it. Well, I contacted the sheriff. They left a card. And met him, talked to him. I was like, yeah, I remember. I said, but I couldn't tell you anything about the truck. I think I remember a truck driving by, but I wasn't pointing it at them. I was just pointing. I mean, I showed it to him. I was like, this is what it was. He laughed. I was like, okay, whatever. Anyway, they ended up filing charges on me.
For what?
For, what was it? Reckless endangerment?
Over pointing a toy gun.
Yeah.
Across the road.
Yeah. So these people that I ended up staying with, so time goes by. Well, they tell me that they've heard I've got a warrant for my arrest. And I'm like,
you're like,
I don't have time to
anything.
do anything, So I walk I have them drive me over. I get out, I go in. I'm like, hey, this is my name. I heard I've been told I got a warrant from it. Click, lock me up, throw me in a cell.
And you're 17?
Yeah. 17 years old.
Oh my God.
I don't know what's happening. I don't understand. So I spend the night in jail, and they take me to the judge the next morning, and she's like, she had seen all my. She's like, are you supposed to be in school? I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm here. So she's like, what is this? Tell me what's going on here. And it's like a Class B misdemeanor. That's what it says on the paperwork. And she's like, tell me what's going on. So I tell her the story, and she's looking around at these guys, and she's also got the story in front of her. I mean, she's got the report, and she goes, okay, well, one of these fine gentlemen you're gone, so you're out of here. We're done here. She's like, you will have to go to court. She's like, but you're out of here. They're going to take you home and then drive you to school. And she's like, are you good? So, I mean, she was pretty cool. Anyway, I ended up going to court, and the DA calls me in.
God, it escalated to this, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you got to go to court on it.
Yeah.
And I have no idea really what severity I'm facing here. I don't know much about the law at that point. And, but he calls me in. He's like, look, just sign this and we'll be done. And I'm like, what am I signing here? He's like, well, it's a guilty plea.
Oh, hell no.
And I was like, I didn't do anything. He's like, yeah, you did. So just sign the paperwork and we're done. I was like, that ain't happening. I'm not signing anything. Aren't I supposed to be in front of a judge or something? And he's like, look here, you little shit. Sign the paperwork and let's be done with this. And I just stood up, like, flung the papers, walked out, barged into court in the middle, which was not a good thing to do.
Probably not the best way to start.
So they kind of pulled me. Anyway, Judge Bart McDougall, he later became, I ended up going to church with him. He became a friend of mine, but they called me back in. They're like, okay, what's going on? I was like, look, this guy's trying to railroad me. I didn't do this thing. So I explained the story to him. And he looks through everything, and of course, I have no idea what all they've got. I didn't even know I had access to the reports. it's not like they were going to tell me that.
No.
So he looked at it all and he's like, you know what? This is dismissed. It's done.
Really?
This is ridiculous. And of course, I got a scolding. He's like, don't ever barge into court. Keep your nose clean, all this stuff. So going back to the attorney thing, I felt like I was really wronged.
For
they
sure.
were really, the whole process was wrong. It was done wrong. And then it got me thinking, like, how many people get railroaded like this? Like, I was just stubborn enough, because it's not like I knew the difference.
Yeah.
I just knew I didn't do anything.
Imagine how many people are signing that piece of paper without
Right.
asking.
And they just sign it, and then they have a guilty plea. Yeah, it wasn't a felony, but still, So, yeah, that was a long way around to why I wanted to get, spawned in my head, like, okay, attorney, I'll go be an attorney.
Interesting. I feel like that's a good example of what would have sparked that.
Yeah.
Just having to deal with our system, which is so broken and corrupt. I feel personally, it's just the fact that we still deal with the things we do in our justice system is wild to me. So, I mean, that's a good.
Yeah, it's broken. It's still broken.
Oh, for sure.
Back then it was, it was probably much worse, I'm sure. But
They can get away with a lot more.
yeah.
For social media and everything's recorded and documents and saved and emails. I mean, then you can get away with whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
So you go off to college, finally you get in, and are you chasing the attorney dream, or did that change by that point?
Well, I'm chasing it. So I was pre-law, and political science, economics, double major.
Okay.
And I was president of Phi Alpha Delta International Law Fraternity. I was president of Students in Free Enterprise, economic organization, and then I got involved in another Chi Alpha religious organization. So I was very involved in the university. I ended up working for the university for a time period, helping get organizations and with their events, like if they wanted to do events, what were some great ideas for the events?
Yeah.
How do we get it out? So, and then I don't think I'd ever really thought about the price of law school. I mean, I really had.
Okay.
I knew. I mean, I'm getting school loans and trying to keep those to a minimum. I didn't really want to go on a ton of debt, but I'm at this point where I really just have to. And I guess it was about my junior. Well, at the end of my sophomore year, I really take a look at the price tag on law school, any law school.
Of how much it's accruing.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, there's no way I cannot do this to myself. I can't put myself in that much debt. I'm already going to be in debt. I can't. So I began rethinking that. And there were some other things that happened when I was a kid with police that were kind of not legit. From the police standpoint, being judged.
Oh, for sure.
Just people pointing the finger because of my parents and because of all of that stuff. And I'm not going to say I was a saint, because I wasn't. I mean, the life that I lived, my parents started giving me dope at 7. So I was doing drugs at 7 and 8, 9, 10 years old.
Oh my God. Your parents are just giving it to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it was a daily thing, but
still.
But yeah, and for me, I wasn't getting hit. They thought it was funny, It was amusing to them and their friends.
What exactly are they giving you?
Started just marijuana.
Okay.
Just
take a puff here and there.
Take some puffs. Here's some beer. Take some puffs of marijuana, and then it would be cocaine.
And they're just doing it for pure enjoyment.
Yeah, it's funny to them.
Watching their 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kid do some coke, and they're just sitting back laughing.
And for me, it's a win. Like I said, they're not angry. They're not hitting me, So it's a win for me. Why not?
And so at that point, obviously, if they're that big into it, you've ran away twice, called the cops on them. They've done a bust. So the local law enforcement, especially in those smaller communities, they know exactly who you are and who your parents are. So you're labeled right out the gate.
Sure. Yeah.
So when you run in with them, they know exactly who you are and what you're about off the image of your parents.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I had a skateboard. It was the cheapest thing I could find to get around here and there, and so I was a skateboarder. I would skateboard, and that got a bad rap. Of course, they just think you're up to no good.
Yep.
Tearing up stuff, and I just wasn't that kind of person. I didn't tear up anything. I didn't break the law. I mean, other than the things that, I did drugs. I did some things like that, but I wasn't out just trying to break the law.
For sure.
So yeah, that got me thinking about those things that happened when I was a kid, and between just the system in and of itself all the way around, and I thought, well, I can shift into maybe law enforcement. Well, I can actually do something good here, and I was already kind of looking in that legal realm, so shifted into criminal justice and kept the poli-sci and then criminal justice. So yeah, graduated and
saved you a lot of money.
Yeah,
or at least you stopped accruing as much.
Yeah, right. And there's still times where man, I should have just done it, but because I do know guys, and they went on, they did the same thing, and they have a lot of debt, and but they're getting it paid off. They're making decent money, and so there are times where I wish I would have done it, but I just couldn't wrap my mind around.
Well, especially coming from nothing, and then everything that you've built to that point has been on your back.
Yeah.
You don't have a trust fund. You don't have a college savings. So I could imagine you look at that statement and see some zeros in there, and you're just absolutely not. No way.
Yeah, I can't even fathom that much money. I mean, you're talking at this point, especially like right before that, growing up, I thought if you lived in a brick home, I thought you were a millionaire. I mean, that was really my mindset.
Yeah.
I thought that's how it worked. I just couldn't imagine. And so, yeah, seeing those kind of dollars, I'm like, no, I can't.
Not for me.
No way I'm going in that kind of debt.
So then you graduate and you become a law enforcement officer.
Yep.
Where at? And
I actually tried to join, got accepted OCS.
Really?
To the Army.
Okay.
So I applied, went and sat on the board, 100% across the board, got accepted OCS.
Yeah.
But I was honest. I have asthma.
Okay.
At the time, it didn't bother me. I had the top scores on PT, but they had I think they told me 8 deaths at Fort Benning alone due to breathing-related incidents and this and that. So they were like, we're not taking anybody with asthma.
Damn.
So that got shot down. So that was immediately after.
Okay.
And then at that point, I went to work for another factory while I was looking, like, where do I want to go, what I want to do. I was, at the time, I'd gotten married right before I graduated college.
To your wife now?
No.
Okay.
So I've been divorced once.
Hey, you're not ready to be married till you've been divorced. You got to learn some things, right?
Yeah, I didn't know, and I had a lot of pressure. I was leading worship at a local church.
Okay.
I'm getting ready to get out of college. I really felt like I don't know. I felt like it was the right thing. I felt like it was what I was supposed to do. I had no one there to really guide me and tell me my whole life. So I just thought this is the normal, flow of life.
Yep.
I think it's what I'm supposed to do.
Get a job, get married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I that's what I did, and moved to Amarillo. I'd never been there. Applied, got into the academy right off the bat, and was president of the academy, and yeah, that was it. And got out and went to work.
Really, right away?
Yeah. I mean, you got to go through the academy.
Yeah. How was the academy for you?
It was good. It was easy for me, coming from where I came from, and I'm not the most intelligent person on the earth. I'm sure I don't have some extraordinary IQ, but I did fine. I didn't have any problem. Obviously, physically, I was, I'm 6'2". I'm, going in at 230 pounds.
Yep.
I had 8% body fat,
So you're ready for it.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I've got no problems on the physical side. I've got no problems mentally. I don't have an issue. So any of the scenarios, all the stuff that we went through, no issues whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just didn't bother me. So, and it was good. I mean, it was fun. It was a great learning experience. I met some lifelong friends in there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's good.
That kind of set you up. So you were excited about, obviously the reason you became a cop, and you kind of mentioned it, was because of obviously lack of help, seeing how the kind of system was in your town. So now you're going through all of this, and is it in your mind that you're ready to make a difference, and you're going to do it the right way? Was that kind of your mindset going into it, seeing how you were treated by previous law enforcement?
Yeah, that was a big part of it. And I really didn't know. I mean, I just knew, one, this is an honorable career.
Mm-hmm.
It's one where I feel like I could probably go in and make a difference in people's lives. I'm going to get a paycheck that's probably the highest paying paycheck I've ever had.
Yep.
So these are the things that stability.
Yeah. Yep.
Stability in my life. And stability for, at the time, my wife.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, all those things were sitting in my mind. And I hadn't even thought about like SWAT or narcotics or special ops or any of these. I mean, it was literally just like, I'm going to be a police officer.
So, I mean, obviously you go through graduation, and do you do your ride-alongs, or are you just right into it? You do the left seat, right seat?
Well, so you got to go through the FTO program.
Mm-hmm. Field Training Officer program, right? Okay.
Yeah. So, and there's like phases. So you got 25% phase, 50% phase. So the percentage is how much work you're supposed to do, right? Like,
yep.
The first phase, you're doing 25% of the work. The FTO is doing 75, and so on. So it's 25,
and then
50,
it slowly
75,
switches
100%, and then finally you're out on your own.
Yeah.
And there's a red book that, they're grading you and doing all the stuff. So I think for me, it was like right out of the gate, I was doing pretty much all the work.
Yeah.
I was doing. Yeah, I mean, and
which isn't always the worst case, because
No.
I mean, if you're thrown to the fire and to the wolves, I mean, you figure it out quicker that way.
yeah, and back then, like, so I've never been to Amarillo, even when I applied. So,
What's Amarillo like as a brand new moving to Amarillo? Now you're a cop there. I mean, because you're figuring out the city really quick as a cop being in the streets. So you get to see all sides of Amarillo.
Yeah, and I really had no idea when I had applied. Like I said, I'd gone up and I thought it was a mistake. I don't know if you've ever been to Amarillo, Texas,
Oh, yeah.
but when you're going west into Amarillo, like that east part of town, you're just like, what is this? This is nasty.
Mm-hmm.
And that I remember when I went up there for like interview and testing and stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And I mean, there are nice parts of Amarillo, so I just had to learn it.
You're like, God, I hope I don't get that.
Yeah, and we're talking a time. This is back in like early 2000s.
Okay.
And I don't, personally, there's no I don't have a smartphone. There's no smartphone.
You
We
can't
don't
just
have
Google
GPS.
things, yeah.
You got a book, right? It's a book with it's a map. So you have to like look through this map. So it was tough for me. I mean, that was the hardest part for me, was learning the streets and learning where to go and how the grids were set up and all this stuff. But and then you start to learn the sides of town and how it's, because every city has its
good and bad.
It's all sanctioned out, like it's spread out and demographically, like how people are living. So
culturally in a way, yeah. And it's fascinating. I guess most people probably don't ever think about that. But if you actually pay attention when you're in a city, how the different demographics or cultures or gangs and religions, I mean, everybody has their parts of town. If you really break them through, they coincide and they'll bleed into others. But it is when I guess as a law enforcement officer, you really get to see the lines.
Oh yeah, and it's very segregated. And it's not one of those things where it's intentional. It just happens.
Yeah.
It ends up happening because of association, family, friends,
Work, income.
you know, extracurricular activity, depending on what is it you're into, what are you doing, and what is your income level, and it happens everywhere.
Are you patrolling the whole city, or did you get a unit, or what do you call them?
During the FTO, a beat.
Okay.
During the FTO, you get switched around. In fact, I might still hold the record of most FTOs, because I finally just told them, just keep everyone consistent. I'll be fine. So if you want to shift me around, it's cool.
Yeah.
So you go all over, but I ended up getting to kind of choose my playground.
Okay.
Because I did well.
Yeah.
SWAT guys had already come and said, as soon as you're eligible, you're coming with us.
Okay.
So I'd established myself pretty well, at that time. So I chose Midnights on the south side of town, and that was the playground.
Playground as in most activity?
Yeah, and so we had the north side.
Okay.
The north side of Amarillo is more like that's the poorer, side of town. There's a lot of drugs. But that's not where people go to commit crimes.
South side?
The south side is like where people went to go to sell the drugs, because that's where the money was.
Okay.
That's where people went to go break into things, break into homes to commit the crimes. So I could see that, and everybody's like, "Oh, you want to be where the action's at?" It's like the action is on the south side. That's where the car chases happen. That's where the foot chase. That's where the bars are. Like all the action is over there. So that's where I want to go. So that's where I chose. So I had a beat. Well, when you're the new guy, you're the ghost. You're, for lack of a better term, you're the bitch.
Oh, for sure.
We
call them boots in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. You're the one that gets like whoever doesn't show up that night. You're getting their beat.
Yep.
Which was fine. I mean,
gotta do your time.
Yeah. And then it made me learn like what beat do I want.
Because you're getting to experience them on your shifts, but all over the place.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got to learn like, okay, this is too far south. Like right here on 5-2, this is where all the action's at.
Okay.
This is where it's at. So.
What was your first chase like? Do you remember?
Yeah. Like foot chase or car chase?
Both. I want to hear them both. What was your first car chase like? Were you on your own, or were you still
I was with an FTO, and I was driving, and he was a Marine, Michael Mogolinsky. We're cruising along, and light the sky up. We already know he's a suspect. He takes off, and we're having a normal conversation. And Mike to this day will tell you we're just flying through the neighborhood.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, what is that sound? And he's got the mic, and he's like, I don't know, that does sound weird. And he'd say oh, we're doing all this stuff. I mean, it was exciting, but it was also, we were just having a normal conversation during this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was fun.
How did it end up?
Well, that one in particular, so we get to a main road, and this guy just shoots across. And obviously, we have to be a little more cautious.
For sure.
We can't just slam into people. Car's coming with no lights on. We didn't know at the time, but it's a police officer. And she turns and stops right in front of us. So she blocks us off. And it's not chasing the obvious car that we're chasing, so we end up having to go around. So by then we end up losing. No, we picked him up later.
Okay.
Did find him later. There were officers all over the place, so we did. Someone else ended up finding him. He had jumped out and bailed and took off and hid, and then we ended up having to call the K9 in to track him, and we found him hiding in a.
What was the noise?
What
you said? What was you and your partner?
Oh, we went back and looked, and it was like something had hooked itself to the back of the car, like a trash bag. Was back there,
and you could hear it flapping.
I could hear it flapping.
Okay,
and I mean, it tore off or got loose or whatever at some point, but we're pretty sure that's what it was. So anyway, it was
first foot chase.
First foot chase. That was 25% phase, and there was a big bar there, and I can't even remember now because it's not. I think it was called Grand Station, and they had multiple bars within a bar. So you go to the country, you go to the rap, you can go wherever.
Just a cauldron for a fight and shit to go down.
Yeah. So when you knew like, and the FTOs, I should say, knew like when it was, if you want to get a rookie in a fight, we're going over here. So it's closing time, and I was with another Marine, riding with him, and he's like, "Hey, let's go to Grand Station." So and he's driving. I'm in the passenger seat, and we're going along. Of course, I'm looking. I'm excited, and he's pulling through the parking lot. He's yelling at people to get moving. Well, I look over and I see this dude just whack, just clock this guy. Mm-hmm. Whew, out I go. I didn't even say anything. I was out into the running. This guy saw me coming. He took off. You know, of course, he didn't make it very far. I was pretty amped up, and he got tackled, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
So, but I guess that's part of, and like I said, that was early on. That's part of what they want to see. They want to see if you're going to be, you know, what are you going to do when you see that stuff? Are you going to be like, oh, what should I do? You know, or just take action? Because I didn't even, he was still looking the other way when I jumped out of the car. And so he came over, and he was pretty happy. He was pretty happy that he had a rookie with him that was going to take care of business. So.
Before you went SWAT and all that, which I definitely want to get into, was there a moment where, like an absolute embarrassing moment on the streets? I feel like all cops have like a moment where you're just, something happens, like, just you remember, you're like, damn, and you go home, you're like, that was embarrassing as hell.
I'm trying to think up to that point. I can't think of one at that point.
Yeah. Later on?
Yeah, I mean, right. I think it was my second night out on my own. You know, I'm so excited to be out on my own. Get sent this call, some apartment complex, and there's a lot of crime in that area, but couldn't get anyone to answer the door, and I'm by myself at the moment. It was just a report call. So I step out to my car, and there's like apartments all around, and I'm on the radio, and I'm like, hey, you know, see if you can call them back. Nobody's answering the door. Well, I'm standing there looking, and it's dark, and I'm not in my car, and I see this, like these two people walking on the other side of the road, a little ways up and there's cars all along the road, and they're checking doors, and I'm just standing there watching them check doors. So and then they open one, so I've got to see them commit a crime. So I'm sitting here like, okay, that's 3 doors they're checked. They're definitely, these are not their cars. We get one open, and I'm trying to, like, they're just far enough away that I don't want to, like, take off. So I'm, like, getting over towards my car, and I'm trying to get in position. Well, they take off running. They see me and take off running. So I'm in my car, and I drive it, and there's 2 of them. I'm calling it out. I can only pick one because they split off. So I jump out, and I take off running, and I tackle this guy in the field. And it's muddy. He's like face down, like I tackled him, and he's just like, you know, suffocating in the mud. Not really, but he's face down. And I'm on the radio, like yelling, telling everyone where the other guy went, and that I'm down with this guy. And the guy's like sitting there like this. He's like, "Hey, get off my back!" And I'm keyed up, just straight up keyed up. And I was like, no, shut the fuck up.
So, you're screaming this over the net?
Yeah, and I'm still keyed up. I didn't even let off at all.
Yeah.
And I just keep talking, and then so I do my thing, and I get back, and I get him. They catch the other guy, get them all back, and my sergeant's like, man, that's outstanding, dude. Like, great job, and all this stuff. And he's like, but
next time.
Yeah, next time, don't stay keyed up. And say that on the radio, please. And I was like, oh, God. I thought I was going to get in a lot of trouble, but he was cool. He didn't get me.
So how long were you on the road before you transitioned to SWAT? How long were you there before you were eligible?
So 3 years. You had to be 3 years before you could get on SWAT.
So you saw some shit in those 3 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You get any shootouts during that time?
Not in those 3 years. I didn't personally get in shoot. There were some that happened, you know, some officer-involved shootings and stuff. I had never been in any shootouts. I'd pulled my pistol plenty of times, you know, just depending on, especially at night, there's, you know, You just never know what you're rolling up on. And
What was the scariest part about being on patrol in Amarillo? Like, what was your biggest threat?
and you know, there was a question, I think, in that questionnaire that you had. And it was like, what's the most dangerous situation?
Yeah.
I think the scariest part were traffic stops.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I mean, because you don't know. You have no idea. When you're sent to a call, you know, whatever, at least you have some kind of idea. You know there's something happening. There's some kind of, it's domestic, it's this, it's that. When you do a traffic stop, there's a good chance you don't know anything about it.
For sure.
You might. Maybe you know that this is, I mean, there were plenty of times like I knew this was a suspect in something, and that's why I'm stopping the car. But if I'm just doing a basic traffic stop, I've got no intel. I don't know where they've just come from. I don't know what they've got in the car. I don't know who they've got in the car. And especially at night, you just have no idea. So I really think that's the most dangerous part about, personally, about being a cop. You know, you got more officers shot in those situations.
For sure. I mean, they could just have a shotgun barrel right to that window in the passenger back driver's seat, and you walk up and you have no idea.
Yeah.
I feel like that's got to be pretty nerve wracking. You know, on average, how many stops were you making a night? I mean, it could be a couple to a lot, I guess, depending on the night.
Yeah, depending on the night, depending on what there were times where I was specifically focusing on something, you know, on my beat, but you're making several a night.
Okay. So you never know. Did you ever have any any scary situations?
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the time it was on when I was on specialized units.
Okay.
Had plenty of those.
Yeah.
Shootings,
Really?
shootouts, and stuff like that.
Well, let's get into those. So where did you start? So you went obviously patrol, and then what was your first? You go
So
to SWAT.
You get into SWAT, and and then simultaneously I also did crisis intervention. So right before my 3-year mark, they pegged me and said, "Hey, we want you to do crisis intervention."
Which is what exactly?
Crisis intervention, you're dealing with like mental health situations.
Which could be scary, I feel like.
Very, very dangerous. Yeah, always very dangerous.
Okay.
Suicidal, homicidal, things like that. So,
Is this like hostage situation? Like some husband went off and he's got his wife in the house? And
well, that's more of a SWAT deal.
Okay.
But you're getting called out on like, you know, the true mentals, where they're talking about killing themselves. Someone's called and said they're trying to kill themselves, or they've talked about killing someone. You have to go check it out.
And what's your role on this?
My role is to evaluate, like, are they mentally ill? Do
Okay.
they need help? Do they need to go to jail? Have they committed a crime?
Are you there on the scene with them evaluating? Yeah. So do you have SWAT or other, obviously it's not just you. You're rolling out with a team, or is it you?
Well, I generally at least one other officer to at least evaluate what's going on.
Okay.
So this isn't like a hostage situation. Generally.
Okay.
This is like someone is called, something has happened, and someone's saying they're losing their mind and they're going crazy. So there's plenty of times I roll up and they've got a knife and they've sliced, you know, half their neck open.
Really?
And they're ready to roll. Or
These are the types that are looking by like suicide by cop.
sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or just legitimately mentally ill, like they need help.
Mm-hmm.
And so go up, evaluate, talk to them. I was just good at having a conversation with people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've been through enough in my life and understood that.
Yeah.
So it was easy for me to have a conversation with people and not get super excited with all the things I'd seen in my life and gone through. Like this, it's not a problem having that conversation. So that was kind of why they said, "Hey, we want you to come do this." So plenty of instances there. And then shortly after, 3 years, you had to be 3 years to get on SWAT. And then they pulled me into SWAT. So I was doing both. And yeah, man, that was exciting. SWAT was, you know, it was like the place to be, right?
Were you designated SWAT? Because I know a lot of departments, you're on the road and then you're also SWAT. So when you're called in, is that how it worked? Or that was it? I mean, are you just
We only
SWAT?
had like a few that were designated SWAT.
Okay.
Like that's all they did.
Yeah.
Well, and it still wasn't all they did, but That's
Their main primary.
Yeah, that was primary. So I got to do dual, which every call out you still went on. You went on. You did all the training. Everything was the same.
Okay.
But that's not the only thing that you did.
Got it.
So you had to kind of work into that.
Okay.
Yeah, I did that, and I enjoyed doing both. I mean, it was tough because worked midnights and incidents during the day. You still got to get up. You still got to go deal with whatever. We ran search warrants. We would do the hard hits and things for the search warrants for the narcotics and all the stuff.
How's that for doing a hit on a house for narcotics? I mean, that's got to be, those guys I feel like would risk it all, especially if they're cartel or dealing with gang members and things like that.
Yeah,
how do those situations go down?
It's just strategic. It's all about like figuring out a pattern, right? So doing your due diligence on surveillance, when's the best time that we can go and hit this place and get the least amount of problems,
okay,
but still get the dope or get the guns or whatever it is we're hitting the house for. We served those for not only it's also like special crimes, if there was like homicides, and we're trying to go in and arrest warrants, whatever, like we did all of that. We serviced all those, and we serviced 26 counties.
Really?
Yeah. So we were the SWAT team for 26 counties.
Holy shit. Yeah. So you're traveling.
Yeah.
A lot.
And not a whole lot on the traveling part of it generally meant like something bad was happening.
Okay.
And like shootings. We had one where officer was pinned down behind a car. Veteran had PTSD. She went to knock on the door. They heard shots fired, and he started shooting at her. She was pinned down behind the car for 2 hours until we got there. While he continued
eternity.
shooting. Yeah, it's an eternity.
Yeah.
To me. She was so exhausted when we got to her.
I could imagine. But is there any missions? What do you guys call them? As service, a mission, I guess.
I guess it would just depend, but I guess mission.
Is there one that stands out to you that was just good, bad, the ugly?
There's several. I guess one in particular was out of town. There was an officer shot. So they were going in to serve an arrest warrant in a smaller town. Officer was shot in the face. The guy was hiding inside. And as he came around the corner, shot him. Survived. They managed to get him out. He crawled to a point, and they managed to pull him out.
This is the officer that came around the corner you're talking?
Yeah.
Okay.
And got him out, so they called us, of course, and he was barricaded, So we got there and got it surrounded. Couldn't figure out, the house had a really strange layout. We couldn't find the floor plan. There were really no good photos in any kind of case file that we could pull up. So we're having to probe the best we can. We end up moving up. I toss a throwbot in. So we're doing some mapping that way, trying to find this guy. Ended up finding a room that we didn't even know was there, just a small room. So I planted up on that with the throwbot.
What's a throwbot?
It's literally it's a cylinder with wheels, and it's got a camera, and it's got a tail on it, and you just freaking break a window and toss it in and get back, and then you can just operate it.
Really? And it's just you can watch it and kind of get a layout of where he's at or what the house is.
Just helps you set up. So once we figured out, I watched him open the door. I set up and I was like, what is this? Is that a closet? And I was sitting there, because I'd been through what I could get through.
Yeah.
And then I saw the door just barely, just lucky enough to be looking. I was like, that dude is in there. So we, obviously chemical.
As in tear gas?
Yeah.
Okay.
A bunch. Got the robot in there, the big robot, and breached that area, that door. We were about to breach it. He came out into another area because we put so much gas in there, and the robot's in there. And he starts hitting it and doing all this stuff. And then, of course, I'm on that backside. He comes to the door and gets to a certain point and starts coming up with the weapon. The armored vehicle's right there. and buddy of mine's, and he's sitting there looking at him. So he starts retreating as he's coming up with that weapon. He's retreating at the same time. So they take him out, hit him in the femoral, in the leg, and it also hits his femoral artery. So then we have to run up. We have no idea how many people are in this house or that were in that room. We just know that he's the one, but we don't know anything else. So then we come around and immediately roll up, and so we got to go up, and I go up and drag him out, and his legs flopping every which way.
Oh yeah.
Get him out, and and now we have to do what we do. So I
tourniquet.
Make sure he's not armed, and then throw some tourniquets on. We also usually take tac medics with us that we train up. We're trained as well, but we like to have those guys there once we feel safe in an area or we can control an area. We bring them in. They can do a little bit more on that side, and so yeah, that was one.
Yeah, I bet you got a million of those being on SWAT. How long were you on SWAT for?
10 years.
10 years. Damn, you got some stories.
Yeah.
Let me hear some more. I love these type of stories.
The one I was telling you about, the rescue mission, was, like I said, female officer. She was by herself, small town.
Mm-hmm.
Went up. He starts shooting through the door. She luckily doesn't get hit. Gets behind her car, and is very smart enough. She gets behind the engine and the wheel well.
Mm-hmm.
Hunkers down. She's calling. So we're probably a little over an hour away. But by the time you get the call gets here, and they call someone else, and you finally get the call, and then you
go get geared up.
So 2 hours she's been down. Her car looked like Swiss cheese. This guy's just been just laying. He's got who knows how much ammo, and it turns out to be a lot.
Texan.
Yeah, it turns out to be a lot. So get there, get set up. We're putting rounds in the house. Obviously, a bunch of scope. We get her, we rescue her, get her out. We set up some snipers. There's no visual. You can't get a visual on this guy in the house. Everything's blacked out. But they're putting rounds through the house. Reportedly he's the only one in there.
Mm-hmm.
He's putting rounds out of the walls and doors. So this goes on for a pretty good while. We're in this kind of firefight, and he stops. So we're not really sure, to hit him. So time goes by. How these. Well, I don't know if you know how. It's an eternity.
Oh yeah.
On some of this stuff, it just takes forever. So we push the robot up, and there's a can of gas right at the front door. Right, so we've jacked with this dude long enough. He's not wanting to listen. So it's time to do some other stuff. So breach that front door, and we put chemical in there. Well, he's not coming out. We don't know if he's got a gas mask. We don't know. He could be in the house. We've tried to figure out, can we get the water turned off? But now it's much activity that's taking place. We're not messing around with this dude.
Yeah.
So we throw burners in. So it's chemical, but it's a burner.
What do you mean by that? Catches fire?
Yeah.
Okay.
We intentionally throw it on a couch.
Oh, really?
And catch the house on fire.
Really?
Yeah. Because we want this dude out.
Yeah.
And he's a danger. So house catches on fire, and this dude has thousands of rounds.
And they start cooking off.
And they start cooking off, and they're going everywhere. It's everywhere. Just pop. And the house is just up in flames, and so that was pretty intense. It was like 4th of July meets
for sure
war. It was very weird, but so finally this dude comes crawling out, and he's been hit. We've hit him through the wall.
Okay.
He's been hit. He comes crawling out. So now we have to rescue him while all these rounds are cooking off in the front yard of this burning house. So we push up, and cover and get him out of there, and that was crazy. And he survives.
Really?
Yeah. survives to go to prison for
Those-
the rest of his life.
I'd say that's probably the worst case scenario for him, you know?
Yeah, it really was. And, and I mean, it's a sad deal. Ultimately, he made very bad decisions, but he was a veteran. He had PTSD really bad.
Oh, yeah.
Once we talked to him, you can't help but feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
And want to help, but at that point, like,
The
deal's done.
Oh, yeah. Everything's off the table at that point.
Yeah, there's no helping. So you just wish, like, he had been reached a little bit before that.
Yeah.
So.
You ever deal a lot with gangs down there, or was it just drugs mainly? Well, obviously, if you have drugs, you got gangs.
Yeah, a lot of gangs. Very specific ones, but a lot of gangs, biker gangs, Los Compadres. There was cartel that we had to deal with.
How was that? Are they? I mean, you hear some people play off cartel like they're just cartel here. But then if you and work around and deal with the cartel, how evil and sick of human beings they are on a whole other level. Were you dealing with that, or were they just pushing drugs through there?
It's mostly drugs. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's mostly drugs. I mean, we would have some incidents like where we'd find somebody at a park and they're done. They're smoked and killed, and it's clear what's happened.
Really?
It's drug related, but it's also cartel related. So, but mostly drugs, especially with I-40
rolling through there.
It was a pretty good hug. Meth was probably clearly by far the worst drug. I mean, it was just everywhere, and a lot of it passed through Amarillo so much.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, it's a corridor through there.
Yeah.
So after SWAT, you went into undercover?
So I did special, like a street crimes unit, so we did undercover, we did stings. It was a special ops called PACE, Proactive Criminal Enforcement.
Okay, so that all fell under that.
Yeah, and so we worked closely with the DEA, FBI. I mean, we're always doing stings with those guys. We just worked together constantly with the marshals.
Really?
In fact, we were actually ended up getting like deputized several times because we worked so closely together.
Really?
So, and we would do different stings. Like, sometimes it was dope. Sometimes it's we had a huge issue with illegal gambling. We had like 40-something spots in everything.
Really?
With illegal gambling. So we go undercover, go in, gamble, wearing the cameras and changing out, and everybody's listening and doing all the stuff, get the money, go, and then you have to set up a whole sting. We ended up closing down like 40-something illegal gambling establishments.
How fun is it going undercover?
It depends on what it is, but it's fun. I mean, it's fun. It's just fun to see, like, how long can I get away with this? Like, are they going to see through this, or, what's the but really you just, I mean, it's just like talking to anyone else, you just know in the back of your mind, like, be prepared.
For sure.
You're just on edge, like, be prepared for whatever happens. Like,
did you ever get made?
No, but one of the guys, so we were in one spot, and the guy that I went in, my partner at the time, he got made, but
How'd
we
that
went
go
in
over?
separately.
Okay.
Right. So he got made. Somebody recognized him, someone that he had
Arrested
once
previously.
before. They kept looking over at him, and I didn't know what was going on at first, and then I started kind of picking up on it, and I was like, oh God, okay. And I was like, this guy's gonna get made, and they're listening. We've got an app on our phone, so they're listening to both of us, and sure enough, like, they're like, hey man, what'd you say your name was? So the whole deal goes, and like, you're a cop, you're a pig, so they're just like going off, and I'm like, this pig in here. So I just join in.
Oh, really? Fuck this guy.
I mean, what else do you do,
Yeah.
So you just go along.
Yeah.
Of course, he had dropped me off, and then we were in the same ride, but he had dropped me off and then pulled up, and then I came walking up like I was just a dude walking up to come in. And, so anyway, he took off, and I'm like, okay, you guys are going to give me another ride. Pick me up around the corner.
Who were you guys? Are these bikers, or is this a bar? Like, what was the situation?
No, this was
scenario?
another gambling spot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he got made in there. So.
Okay, so you're not dealing with gang members
Well, here's
or
the
whatever.
other thing is a lot of these gang members and there was so much like dope deal. That was another reason we go in there. So it wasn't just to shut these places down. There's so much dope dealing that goes on in there.
Really?
So a lot of guns, a lot of drugs.
I'm just thinking a lot of like old Asian women in there, gambling is how I'm thinking it is.
You do have that. So you have the mix. It's
Really?
really weird. You've got like, Betty White's in there,
What type of
gambling.
gambling are we talking? Is it? I mean, obviously they're not in there.
A lot
just
of
pulling
slots.
Oh, they are.
Yeah,
I was going to say
a
they're
lot
not
of
in there just pulling slots.
Yeah,
Are
a
they?
lot of slots, and then
Really?
you'll have other games, but then they'll have like back rooms where they've got some other games going on, card games or whatever. But mostly slots.
Really?
But man, we had like a ton of homicides and drugs
Related to the casinos, or I guess
Yeah.
the gambling rings.
and it was kind of it was almost like do we bust these places or do we not? Because all you had to do was set up the road. And if a car left one of these places, if it wasn't Betty White, you were getting dope or you were getting a gun or you were getting warrants. So, it was,
Really?
all of them.
So it was a cash cow for you guys.
Yeah, it was a cash cow. So it was, and a lot of the patrol were like, please, man, don't take this one off our beat, man. Like, this is our honey hole. Like, you can't take this from us, so.
No kidding. So,
it was-
you're using these gambling rings and just picking people up all day on them.
Yeah.
Where are they hiding these? Are these in homes or back of businesses behind like a closed secret door?
Usually businesses. So it got to where it was really, you could spot them because if you drove by a little business, like you'd have a strip mall and the windows are blacked out on one, that's what it is. So you just set up. Yeah. In fact,
Just like that,
we
huh?
had an operation, we called it Dark Windows. That was like a big bust where we took down like 20 of these in a day and called it Dark Windows because
Really?
it's that obvious. Because they don't want people, don't want people knowing that.
So they're not even hiding them in the back. They're just blacking out the windows and the whole establishment just becomes a casino.
Yeah. And there were some that were in homes. Yeah. There were a few here and there that you'd actually hear about in different neighborhoods, some of the worst neighborhoods. And you finally get people in the communities don't really want to talk about it. But if you could get someone to talk about it, you'd finally figure out where it was at.
Really?
We figured out there was a homicide. There was one dude got smoked, killed, drug out. They drove the car up a little ways, set the car on fire.
Did it had a gambling debt or something?
I don't know. We caught the guy eventually. In fact, it was all on Live PD. Live PD was with us.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
We just watch. I love that show.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. It's fun.
No kidding. So they're just slinging everything out of a casino.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great place. What better place? You've got dope heads who need that dopamine hit, not only with their dope, but they want to play the games. They're awake. So it's a great place to sell dope, and all those guys are going to be carrying weapons. They're all felons, mostly. So
No
and then you have the, Betty Whites that literally are just going in there because they're retired and they have
gotta get
nothing
their
better
fix.
to do. So
How does an old lady hear about?
I don't know. And I'd ask, and they'd be like, "Oh well, so and so told me," and I'm like, "Okay, whatever."
Literally just some old grandma in there.
Yeah, grandma, grandpa, like, "Oh, I don't know. I just like to play," And they make money. That's a part of that's also illegal. Like, I went in there and gambled. That's how you could bust them and actually bust just the gambling establishment is them pay out. So plenty of time. Go in there, win $500 on a hit. It's basically like little tiny meth filled Vegas. It's just
That's hilarious.
And there were people that we talked to. Man, I won $5,000 or I won $10,000.
And you said you busted 20 in a day. How many of these things are out there?
Well, and like I said, we had 40. We had 40 of them, and we took down several.
That you knew of.
Yeah, we took down a bunch and figured out it was a problem. Obviously, like, okay, this is a bigger problem. So we got everyone involved. We got the counties because Amarillo is split with 2 counties.
Okay.
So we got both counties involved. We had the marshals involved. We had everybody involved, and we took it even further where we were taking it down the road of like money laundering and getting the FBI involved and all that stuff. So because we found some of those establishments as well.
Did you take them all down, or did you leave any for the patrol guys to be able to?
And we took them all down.
Did you?
Yeah. And I felt kind of bad. Now, that only lasts so long, right?
They're right back up.
Eventually, like I think it was like 2 years. They were down 2.5 years, and then you start seeing some small ones pop up, and you just leave them.
Yeah.
And okay, guys, there it is. Go get it, because you want them to have that. I mean, it's just so easy.
Yeah.
It's just like picking cherries.
Oh, for sure.
It's like car leaving, got it, going to jail. So.
And you just flip the light. You just wait for them to.
Yeah, I mean, of course they're gonna have a violation, but the moment you see a violation, yeah. And usually, like we had the fortunate, we were fortunate enough to be like undercover, so we'd be sitting in undercover stuff and just like chilling or whatever, and just watch them and then follow them, in our unmarked car, undercover stuff, and then okay, violation here, come get them, So we'd go and help those guys out too.
Oh, okay.
Doing some of that,
which I'm sure that's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun for them, It gives them an opportunity. But once again, it's also dangerous. Like
for sure,
guys leaving. We had one leave, went to stop him, jumped out, started shooting at us, took off.
Really?
Running, and luckily we were all there. Chased him around the corner. As we're coming around the corner, we've already got guys coming up. He starts trying to shoot at them, and obviously he didn't survive that incident. But
ended pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty quick.
What were you using for firearms?
I use 9mm Glock.
That's it, huh?
Yeah.
No,
now I like that. That was just my patrol pistol.
Yeah.
And when I carried my pistol, that I carried on SWAT, but yeah, ARs, M4s.
Okay.
Yeah.
No MP5s. You guys weren't rolling anything like that?
We did for a while. We had some MP5s, and they're fun. Mm-hmm. They're a lot. In fact, that incident I'm just talking about, they had an MP5 on that one. So,
oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we had several of them. Now I don't even know if they have any left. They ended up making a deal on a bunch of. They ended up trading them in for some other guys, but they're a lot of fun, especially when you're doing simunitions and stuff. Like it was a lot of fun.
What was your?
Up.
Oh yeah, you can smoke a dude real quick with them.
You're just like
Those things hurt too.
Yes.
People don't understand how bad sim rounds hurt,
especially those like AR rounds. Like, oh my gosh, I've got so many scars.
Scars for sure. I had scars for years.
Dude.
We did sim rounds in the military quite a bit, and you think you're just looking at him like, oh, this is gonna be like a paintball.
Yeah, no.
I shot a dude in his chest, and it went through his camis, through a pack of cigarettes that he had in his chest, and it was just mangled his chest. I mean, those things are. Yeah.
We did the best we could not to blast people, up. But the situation called for it. We did at least try to like put it on the hard plastic on the head.
Yep.
Unless we were just jacking with somebody, and they'd be like, boom, inside thigh.
Oh, I caught I had this staff sergeant when I was in, and this dude hated me, and we were at this mountain town like doing this, the sim rounds training, and this guy was such a coward, but so he was like one of the proxy, like he was watching, one of the monitors or whatever.
Oh yeah.
But he didn't have the armbands on. And I caught him. He was on this other side of this wooden fence, and I'm watching him. He's walking around, and there was like this. It was an old, like demilled military town that we were in. So there's like like little steps, and it was like a planter's boxes that were like tiered.
Yeah.
And I walk up on these things, and he's here to the wall way on the other side of this wooden fence, and I lit this dude up, and he starts screaming, whatever his position was, like monitor or whatever, and I unloaded he's on the ground like trying to roll out of the way, and I sat there, and I unloaded a whole mag on this dude.
God. Punished him.
And I jumped back off and ran, because where we were all kind of like took over this position, we're watching this block for the simulation shit. And where I was, and I saw it moving, because through the slots of a wooden fence, and I thought it was our enemy coming, and but I looked through real quick because I didn't want to if it was a platoon over there, I was going to get my guys. I didn't want to engage a whole platoon, but I saw it was just him, and I'm looking through, and I'm like, oh, you motherfucker, you're done. And I sneak up, and I unloaded on him, and I took off running. Nobody ever said a word to who it was, and so I got the last laugh on him, and he was bitching for a week about it. I'm like, God, my calf muscle. Just his whole back just lit up, and he's rolling around on the ground.
That's awesome. We would have, man, it was hard to get guys to train. You know, I was also a Sims instructor, and it was so hard, like, to get the guys to, some of them loved it, but get regular patrol to train with simunitions for that reason. Cause
Yeah.
they
suck.
I mean, it does suck, but you know, it's one of those. I'm just telling them, like, look, what would you rather have?
Mm-hmm.
You wanna get the real thing hitting you, or you want to train in here and
It's gonna hurt way
like,
more with the real
learn
one.
some lessons, like, you know, when you're getting hit, why you're getting hit. And,
Yep.
you know.
You learn from mistakes real quick when you catch a sim round in the
Yeah,
in the thigh.
I guarantee you're going to pie that corner just a little bit better,
little bit slower,
instead of pop, 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 you know. Or you're going to look at that threshold a little bit longer and take that a little bit slow.
Yep.
You know,
Change your angles real
that's
quick.
right. Yeah,
Yep.
angle of awareness. Yeah, it was always fun playing the bad guy. Like,
Oh, for sure.
On those deals where you're just like, oh, I'm going to get this dude. He is
For
not
sure.
paying attention. But
It was always fun. We had a couple. I got voluntold to grab a couple of my buddies, and we had to go out for a grunt unit that was doing their workups, getting ready to play. So we were playing the opposition force on them, and we called it Castletown. It's on penalty. Marines have ever trained out there. They know Castletown. Anyways, they had this little village, and we're doing the night mission, and there was only like 8 of us versus a platoon of these grunts.
nice.
And so, us being just the belligerent assholes we were at the time, I was like, hey, I'm going to go lay out in the field. They're going to walk right by me. You guys distract them. And sure as shit, like before when they're all getting their brief, I go lay out in out in the field, and you hear them coming, and I'm talking, they are walking almost on me, and they're all silent. It took everything in me not to just start laughing because it's working. You know, they're MVGs, but it's tall grass to get up to this little house. And they start going through the windows and all this good stuff. My buddies are up top, and they got their helmets on this, I don't know if it's on a barrel or a stick, and they're popping them up, and they're running around on the roof, and I got guys in all different levels. So, you know, every level had something to engage on. And the platoon kind of splits, and the one group piles through this window. So the whole platoon goes in this room on one floor, and I get up behind them, and I just fall right in with them. And they have no idea that I'm not part of their platoon. Like, the last guy never picked up on it. They go through the window, and I walk in that room, and they're all talking, like, okay, we're gonna, and I just flip it on 3-round bursts, and I just, and I just start mowing these dudes down. And the instructor's like, Dad, Dad, start screaming up. They're all sitting there like, what the fuck, where'd this guy come from? That was the most fun, like, when it came to training. And then so they end the whole exercise, and they regroup, and they're all getting their asses chewed, and they're like, we're doing it again. And so this time there was a stairwell that came up, and then there was a ladder that went up to the roof. And so all of us are up there at this point. And this kid, his name was Brown. His last name's Brown. He was the most Louisiana backwoods, like, coon-ass dude you've ever met in your life. This dude would set snares and catch dogs in, like, Iraq and shit, like one of those, just for fun. Yeah. The grunts are working up the stairwell, and there's like 6 of us, and there's just this hole in the concrete. We're on the roof, and we're looking down, and we could see like their barrels and stuff coming. Yeah. And so we're spraying down there and just being complete assholes. And God is my witness. You hear them like, let's frag it, because you know those blue dummy grenades that they're just like a little mini flashbang.
Sure.
They're like, let's frag them. So Brown, he's standing across from me on the hole in this roof, and he looks at me and goes, I'm gonna catch it. And I'm like, you're gonna what? And this grenade comes flying up. God is my witness. It rolls up his flak. He juggles this thing, and I'm like slow motion, like watching this grenade come through this hole. He grabs his flashbang grenade, and as it's rolling up, and grabs it, whoom, throws it back down the hole, hits this Marine dead in the face, and explodes. And then the instructor's like, dead, all of you are dead. So then they're like, you can't throw grenades at people's faces.
Yeah,
and we're like, it's pitch black. We're on our roof. You guys threw it at us. We just threw it back. But I'll never forget, as long as I will be on my deathbed, I'm going to catch it. And I'm like, catch what? This grenade? And he rolls right up, like that grunt just whoop, right up through the hole, and he grabbed this thing off of him, and the guy must have still been looking up, like waiting for the explosion, and catches that. It's a real steel.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing weighs like a pound or two, and split this kid wide open. They had to stop the whole thing. We kind of got our asses chewed because they thought we did it on purpose. I'm like, listen, you guys hired us to be the Op 4. You threw a grenade at us. We threw it back, you know, like. Yeah, we did that shit all night, and it was so much fun. But yeah, I mean, we were all shot to shit, and you learned real quick, and
Yeah.
gave up when you knew you were caught. So
We had some pretty. So you ever heard of Pantex?
Pantex.
Pantex is it's outside of Amarillo, so it's a nuclear. They make and have pieces of nuclear weapons.
Okay.
And it's in Amarillo.
Okay.
It's just right outside of Amarillo. So it's a big deal. I mean, you can't get your car anywhere close to there without having people roll, like military. And,
Okay.
their people roll up on you. So they're highly trained. Most of them are ex-military or are military. We trained with them a lot.
Yeah.
And well, more than once, but one night, and it was the whole night, which was really fun. We went through like 2 towns with all these different places, acting like a piece of this had been stolen.
Oh,
So
okay.
we've planned this thing out for months. So there are role players like throughout 2 towns and like 5 different locations.
Really?
And so we're getting, the whole setup is like we're getting intel where it's going and where, so
Yep.
we're chasing it, we're doing all this stuff. And so we're running in these big giant buildings and we're having to go through, and there's role players on every floor and in stadium and all this stuff. So the whole
Really?
night we're just like, whew, that was just a blast. I mean, we trained with those dudes quite a bit, but that was a lot of fun. You really get to see the difference in training when you
Yeah.
when you train.
Oh,
with
for
different-
sure.
Not only different departments, but then between like who's trained military, who's trained, just like a SWAT operation
Yep.
or whatever. So, but it was a lot of fun.
What was your favorite part about being undercover? Because you mentioned a little bit before we jumped on about working like with bikers and all that. I mean, was that had to have been interesting?
I think I think it's just it's just how do you get them to trust you?
Okay.
How do you get them to and the most interesting was psychologically to me. Like,
Really?
how do you get someone to just believe you are what you're and a lot of times it's just like what you're making yourself out to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really not that easy, but it's also not that difficult. So coming for I think what helped me a lot in any time I ever did that was just being relaxed and being myself, but thinking this is what I'm involved in now.
Yeah.
I'm gambling. I'm a gambler. That's what I am. I'm this or that. So psychologically, not even thinking that you're someone else, that you're just this person. So to me, that was I don't know, that was probably the most fascinating part about doing it.
How long would you go undercover for some of these things? I mean, are you talking months? Is it weeks? Because you see some shows and these guys are embedded in motorcycle gangs for, seems like years almost. I mean, did you ever have any long situations where you were embedded?
No, we didn't do anything long. It was usually like shorter term. I mean, you might do some longer where you're buying dope a few times or something like that, where you're the connection, or you're going with someone who's buying the dope and you're just hanging out with them and you're like the friend because they're a CI or something like that. So, that kind of stuff. It's pretty short term because you're just looking like you're trying to get that next bust to figure out where the dope's coming from. So it's pretty fast turnarounds. Now we did have some guys like that were in narcotics or that were in the DEA that would do longer stints. But
Is that who's doing those long ones?
yeah, usually if they the closer they get to the DEA world, they're doing a little bit longer stints in that. And even then, it's kind of hit or miss with.
It's got to be something major for them to get embedded like that.
Yeah. It's you got to go because that's a really dangerous position to be in.
Oh, for sure.
So
What's it like riding with an informant, I guess, to go buy drugs? Is that pretty scary?
no,
Really?
No, it's not really because
Really?
I don't know. I mean, you just know. We would just trust our guys.
Okay.
Like you just knew because anytime you're doing that, you've got like people are following you. You've got the team ready to take down anyone that needs to be taken. So you just know, like, I trust these guys.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do anything. They're not going to let anything happen. I mean, anything can happen, but so it's really just it's just a normal conversation.
That's wild.
It's just very calm, very chill. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
It's just like another day at work. You just, hey, let's go do this. So I don't know.
I guess you kind of have to, because if you start showing any, nervousness or fear or anything like that, I mean, I'm sure you probably get sniffed out real quick by some of these people.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I mean, it's not that simple. A lot of times we would just do stuff like that where we're getting CIs to do it, and sometimes maybe we do an introduction, like that's how you get in. You've got to get an introduction somehow.
Okay.
So the CI might introduce, but that takes a lot of time to build up to. But at any point, you get enough evidence and enough, then you don't even have to do that. You just take them down.
Right there.
Yeah. Or you set up another buy and do a buy bust. Where,
okay.
Now we're meeting, so the CI is with you, you're with them. Maybe there's been an introduction, or maybe they know you're going to be there. They buy the dope, and then the bust happens.
Got it.
So, and then you're on to the next one. Like, can you spin this guy?
So when you bust that guy, are you just interrogating him, trying to get his suppliers, all that, and then that's what you're just after the next.
It's the next. Like, who's the top? Where's this coming from?
And that's what getting them to flip, and then they cut down on sentence time or all that stuff
Sure.
if they give up information and all that.
Yeah.
Is that the whole point of it?
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Like, how far can I ride this?
Yeah.
Because you'll get to a point where it's going to stop. Like,
Yeah,
somebody's
yeah.
going to be like, "No, I ain't doing. Screw you. I'm not doing this." So,
You said you were working with. What was that like, dealing with those dudes? Because that's when you had. I mean, when we met, your hair was
long.
almost down to your chest, and it was pretty crazy seeing the difference now. But
It was funny, even as a cop, and that's kind of what got the idea. Like when I was just on the street patrol, I kept my head shaved. It was just easier, and I know that I'm arresting these dudes. Like I'm arresting them, and they're like, "Hey, bro, we gotta stick together."
Oh, they think you're.
They think because I'm this big, white dude with a shaved head and some tattoos, and
They
just
automatically just
yeah,
thought
they
you were.
just half the time, and of course, people were laughing. The other officers are like, "These dudes are kind of sweet on you, huh? These guys they really like you." I mean, so it happened more than once. And that's
Really?
kind of that idea, but I mean, it's an association thing. Like
For sure.
they just see an image and they just make an assumption.
And they think you're just because if you were as a cop as a. All right, dude. You
Yeah.
That's hilarious
They
that they
really did,
automatically
we
thought
gotta
that.
stick together. I'm like, I think you know what's going on here. Like you're going to jail.
What is this we?
Yeah,
There's no
we.
we.
In this. There's a me and there's a you, and you're going there.
I'm the cop. You're the criminal.
Yeah.
That's about the we's we're getting here. Yeah. That's wild that they would even consider even saying something like that.
I know, and I'll tell you, as a cop, I was very, I was really laid back. Like I didn't. I mean, I got in plenty of fights and plenty of foot chases and all this stuff. You're going to have those people regardless. But if I could avoid a fight, then I would.
For sure.
I mean,
You don't want. I mean, every fight and every situation that it's escalating is just putting your life in danger.
yeah, and other people got. So I would do everything I could in my power to de-escalate a situation.
Yeah.
And you pick up on cues, like when someone's about to run, and eye movements and like what is their
Starting to
body
tense
language
up
starting to tense up, and they're turning their feet, they're doing this whatever. So you pick up on their heart, their shirt's bouncing 10 million miles an hour. Like their adrenaline's going for a reason. So you pick up on all these things and just using words like, "Hey man, I can see what you're about to do. It's not a good decision. You're going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get hurt." Just being able to talk to people. And so I was always very, I was the guy that if there were 3 or 4 officers on a scene, the the perps or the crooks or whoever, they're like, I want to talk to that guy.
Yeah.
I ain't talking to you, and I ain't talking to you. I'm talking to that dude right there. You know, because I just didn't get amped up.
Yeah.
I just wasn't getting, and if I had to get amped up, I did. And the moment it was over, it was over. It's just a switch. You turn it off, and you go right back down.
Do you feel a lot of guys have a hard time with that?
I do. Yeah.
Why? Is it just because of life experience, or
I think so.
or
I
what's-
think depending on, you know, because you're talking, some of these guys are coming in. You know, we taught the academy. We had a SWAT week where they had to fight us for a week.
Okay.
We put them through scenarios and like all kinds of stuff where they had to fight us for a week. You're seeing these kids come in, and I call them kids. I mean, they're adults, but they've never been in a fight
Yeah.
in their life.
Yeah.
You know, what is it? Was it Fight Club? Like you don't even know who you are unless you've been
Punch in the face.
punched in the face. I mean, to some degree, there's some truth to things like that. If you don't even know if you can survive a fight.
100%.
You know, you don't know if you've never been in a fight. You have no idea how you're going to react.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think, you know, training these guys and they don't know since they've never done it. Even putting them through that. So it's a moment they know they're safe. Deep down,
Yeah.
they know they're safe. We're not going to hurt them. We're not going to kill them.
But that you still
we might
see
hurt
their
them a little
mental
bit.
stage of where they're at, being able to be in a physical altercation if you're using
Yeah.
ads or whatever.
Sure. And so then they get out on the street. So they make it through,
Mm-hmm.
but they still know in those scenarios they're still safe technically. Do they have bruises? Or
It's
they
not
beat
the
up a little
ultimate
bit?
fear level.
Right. So then they get out on the streets, and man, they just they don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to turn it off.
For sure.
And there is a certain empowerment that you feel. I don't care who you are. You're going to feel a little empowered in that role.
As a law enforcement
Yeah.
officer.
You're there. You have been given the authority to take control of that situation,
Mm-hmm.
whatever situation you walk into, and you have a gun and you have a badge, and you have the backing of the department behind you. And so, I think that can go to anyone that's young and inexperienced, and not a lot of life experience. That can go to their head pretty quick.
Real quick.
And then they don't have the ability, they haven't been through enough to know, like, when I get to this point in my hypervigilance, in that state,
Mm-hmm.
adrenaline, all these things, they can't switch that off.
Yeah.
They don't know how to do it. And
Which gets them in trouble.
yeah, it does.
And it's scary to think, too. I've dealt with law enforcement, had my run-ins and stuff, and you could tell, when you run into a cop. And I got in an incident. Actually, I was still in the Marine Corps, and I had this guy, 2 cops show up, and they're MPs, but one of them was just maxed, screaming, and I'm just like, and he's trying to, where were you? Chewing my ass, and then this other one is just sitting there chill, and after the guy chews my ass and threatening whatever, gonna get arrested, whatever, the one comes over and he's like, what happened? I'm like, bro, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And I explained it to him, and he's like, why did you explain it to him? I'm like, look at your partner here, bro. Like, I couldn't get a word in.
Yeah.
And, then once he went and explained it, and I'm like, yeah, guys, like, why don't you just listen for a second? But you could definitely tell. Perfect example. I got in an insurance fraud accident. I had this woman, I'm sure you've witnessed and seen them. I hit her with my truck, and we pull over, we exchange information. It was a total, at the time I didn't know. It was you see him get in front, he slammed the brakes on, and you see him on those dash cam videos. It was one of these, the whole situation. This was last year. Pull over. She has her son, which is, I don't know, in his mid-20s, and then he's got his baby in the car. And we pull over, exchange information. Hey, I get a picture of her ID. She gets a picture of mine. Hey, how do you want to handle this? We'll call. Everything's fine. Cool. I'm sitting there with my buddies. Got a buddy was behind me in a truck. Saw the whole entire thing. She leaves. We eventually leave a few minutes later, talking like, man, this sucks. We were just beginning of a trip. I'm like, God, what a way to start a trip,
Yeah.
I get a call later that evening. This cop, we're putting a warrant out for your arrest for a hit and run, endangerment, threatening the life of a baby, and all. I'm like, what are you talking about? You better turn yourself in immediately. And I'm like, what are you? And this guy wouldn't listen to me. So my buddies and I, we get in the car, we drive a freaking hour back to where this guy was, turn myself in. I walk into the police department, and Gomer Pyle. The biggest, just, you can tell this guy has never had the power of authority. It's typical using everything that he has in his power to come at me, right? This guy's yelling, we're putting a warrant out first. I'm like, for what? He's like, a hit and run. I'm like, how is this a hit and run? He's like, you were a hit and run. I'm like, how is this a hit and run if she has a picture of my ID and here's her ID on my phone? How did I hit and run? Well, that's what she's saying. I'm like, you haven't even got my story. I'm like, is Ashton Kutcher going to jump out? And like, is this an episode of Punk? But this dude's like screaming at me. And then I start yelling at him. And I'm like, dude, how do you do your job? And I'm like, I'm done with you. Go give me a supervisor. Like I'm like, you haven't even taken my statement, but he's just automatically, I'm the bad guy because so when she went back to the scene, called the cops, has her son laying on the hood, baby's crying, they get rushed off to the hospital. And I'm like, and I thank God I had my buddy, the camera guy there, and we have pictures and video. I'm showing him like, why don't you just take a breath, de-escalate the situation, and get the story that you're supposed to get from both sides? Right. And I'm like, explain to me my side. If I hit and ran from this woman, how did you get my information from her, sir? And he was just, and you could tell it wasn't even registering with him. And I'm like, how are you on the streets trying to help people if this is your mindset? Yeah. And it was just, and then finally, like, I think it was the chief, when this woman comes out, and this is Lexington police, by the way, like this department. Yeah. And she comes out and I'm like, can I have a conversation, an adult conversation with you? Like, can I just talk? And she's like, she had to like calm this guy down. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is who you have working for you? Yeah. I'm like, it's 2024 and this is what you guys are putting out on the street. It was scary. Yeah. And it's scary that there's a lot of law enforcement. And that's what gives the bad rep instead of, and I worked in a bar for several years as a bouncer. This is not relating to this by law enforcement, but you have those bouncers in there that are automatically grabbing, snatching dudes, and it's a fist fight every time. Yeah. I've been in enough fights in my life. Like I don't enjoy getting punched in the face. It's just some guys live for it. Not my thing. I have no problem with it. I have no problem fighting, but I don't look for it. So my approach every time, drunk guy, like, hey man, and as soon as you feel intense, listen. We can walk out of here or you're getting carried out of here. These are your options. Like, just come with me and talk to me. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, they'd be like, all right, and they'd come with you. But then you get those bouncers, you're done. They'd grab, and then it was instantly it would blow up. Then those dudes' friends see this and then they're fighting. And I'm just like, guys, like, give them the option first. And then as soon as they would turn, and then, you escalated the situation. We got to get you out of here. But I feel like that's the same with a lot of law enforcement officers. Like, hey, like,
This is why we do what we call SWAT week. It doesn't always help, but we put them through scenarios, and we SWAT guys, we play bad guys. Mm-hmm. So they have to put hands on us. They do the stuff, and if they do their job properly, this was the deal. I mean, sometimes they were going to have to fight regardless. Yeah, you've got to test them a little bit. In fact, they had to one-on-one box us for a minute. Mm-hmm. We did that intentionally, but one of the things was if you do your job correctly in some of these scenarios and try to de-escalate, you're not going to have to fight. Yeah. You don't get hurt. Yeah. We don't get hurt. And then we tell them that over and over and over, like, use your words, explain, just be a human being.
Treat them like a human being.
Treat them just like you would anyone else, like your family, like your friends. Talk to them. The moment you need to do something, do it.
Oh, yeah.
But still, you can still have a conversation, even when I can be in the middle of grabbing somebody and putting them in a hold and do it and still talking to them calmly. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee it helps because, and I tell them, like, you'll see, you're going to put hands on us and we're going to start doing stuff and you're going to start doing stupid stuff that stupid cops do. And I'm actually going to get pissed off just like one of these people will. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to kick your ass.
You think it's a fear or just
it is
lack of experience? But I mean, that also comes with fear.
It. Yeah, it is fear. It's fear, like, they want it over as quickly as possible, and being in those, and you've been in some high intense situation when that adrenaline dump, you get it, and they get it right then. And when they've never had a lot of experience with that, and that's why I say, like, if you've never been in a fight, if you've never been through anything intense, really, fighting with your brother and sister doesn't count, like those intense moments. If you've never had those, you don't know how to deal with it. You don't have stress inoculation. Mm-hmm. And that is a stressful situation when you go to put hands on somebody that doesn't want you to put hands on them. or, whatever. And so they just get too amped up. And then you have the kicker. Then you have, for some, it's just that. For some, they get that experience, plus they know they have the power. And that power trip, some of them go on a power trip. And you better do what they tell you to do and how they tell you to do it, or I've got the power. I'm He-Man. I'm the one, and it's a thing. And it really just, it comes with a lack of knowledge, it's just ignorance.
Yeah.
Along with lack of experience, and not knowing how to deal with that adrenaline and that, whatever you want to call it. And it's sad. It's training, training. And so many officers don't get enough of it. You can put somebody through a 6-month academy. It's not enough.
Until you've been in a true street fight, there's no way to replicate that.
No.
And when you're getting your ass whooped, dude's on top of you and they got the upper hand, and then especially being a law enforcement officer with your gear on, you have that weight on you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be a really, really terrifying moment.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you I mean, obviously SWAT week helps a lot with that.
Yeah. We see people there, there are plenty of them, moments where you see the light comes on that it's not the job for them.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I couldn't tell you how many people wash out.
Oh, no shit.
Is
SWAT week during the academy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought this was something that just you guys put on every year to train up officers.
We did training with, and we put them through scenarios as well.
Yeah.
But this is just before they ever get out on the street, because we want to test them
for
before
sure.
they even get out in FTO phase. We want to know, do you even have the capability? We had a saying, there are some people that are meant to be the police and some people that are meant to call the police. And it's okay. Either one you are. It doesn't matter. It's fine. Go get a different job. Some people just they're not aggressive, for one. And some people are overly aggressive. What happened? And I'll tell you, there were real instances that I saw on a regular basis where you get, it's sad to say, you get the guy that's been picked on, and he finally gets a little bit of power, and he goes on a power trip, and you see that as well, where they get over aggressive because now I'm in charge, and I can do what I want. Yeah. You have to do what I say. So you get both sides. You get people that freeze up and they can't, but when you'll see the light bulb come on, they freeze up, they're done, they're in the loop, it's over. Psh, and you're just like, hey, let's go talk. And we give them a chance. We don't just kick them out, but we tell them this is the moment, this is the aha, right? I saw it, so now you have to make a decision.
Yep.
You either got to step up your game, you got to, not go crazy, but make the decision. And that's getting on that topic, even people just out here carrying guns, they have no idea if they have the mentality or the capability of hurting anyone. And so now they're just carrying something that could be taken away from them.
Yep.
And so I'm big on, especially going through that, seeing officers who they really wanted to do it, but they just weren't capable. And I think spending a lot more time in academies weeding some of that through that, whether it's the over-aggression or under-aggression, trying to find that happy medium would really help a lot. It's just, it's hard to do. It costs a lot of money.
Well, not just that. I feel especially nowadays with the image of police officers, you guys don't have herds of people knocking down your doors that want to be cops. So you're taking what you can get.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. When I went through the academy, 900 people took that test.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Do you know an average of today?
Yeah, about 30.
See, that's scary. And out of that 30, how many of them do you think are actually legit qualified to be?
Out of that 30, probably 15 pass just the beginning test. I'm just talking about before you even get in, you can be accepted. And then so they have to do multiple tests before they can even get enough people. And then you go through the background checks, and then you go through, you got to do a polygraph, you got to do all this stuff. By the time they get through that, you might get 3 people. So now you've got to test again. And so it's really difficult.
For sure.
Really difficult.
It's times, man. I mean, obviously with the media and we say it because I've said it, I'm probably on this podcast before, but I feel that our era law enforcement is now our Vietnam era vets.
Yeah.
And how they're treated, how they're looked down upon. You look at these little kids and they're just fuck that to the cops, and just this little ass kid, and I'm like, where did that? How did that become
the norm?
The normal now, and just F12, F this, but they're the first ones that'll call, and it's just this whole divide inside of our country. And I just had I don't know if you know Raul Garcia, he's an instructor here. He was just on a couple episodes ago, but we were talking. It blows my mind, and I said it on that episode that the biggest thing the funniest thing about the Black Lives Matter movement and the defund the police thing was defunding the police.
Yeah.
And it just, as anybody that has any thought in their mind, it's like, okay, let's take their funding away. It's less training they get. They're less qualified to be on the road. They got shittier gear. Yep. You're putting a more dangerous law enforcement officer on the road, protecting the communities by defunding them, when instead you should have this movement of fund these motherfuckers as best as we can. They have all the best training. They're going through all the psych evals, the testing to make that qualification. Pay them more so that way you're able to have more people applying to this position so you can be more selective on what officers you're putting on the road. Then you have no excuse.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, all that point that you made about shitty gear and doing all this stuff, taking away their training, all this stuff, and defunding is also they're not getting raises, they're not making any money, and they're pissed off.
They're pissed off, and they're out there doing this.
You want them out there on the street?
When I say shitty job, it being to me, and I'll say it all day, like we have a program in our charity to support law enforcement officers. But when I say this, like, this isn't coming from a hateful side of things, because it is the shittiest job to me. You're dealing with domestic. You're going in homes that are hoarders, cat piss, dog shit filled, dealing with children that are living in these environments, and you're seeing that, dealing with death every day, homicides, car accidents, and then you got to go home and kiss your wife and kids and sit down at dinner with them. Like, to me, that is probably the shittiest job. And I say this with love, but because these law enforcement aren't getting enough credit, they're not getting enough support, and they're dealing with all of this, and they got to go home every single day with this weight and pressure and anxiety and stress and hate from the community, and they get up every single day and they do it again. For most of them, dog shit pay, and they should be getting double of what it is. And then you have the media that's crucifying them. They're not talking about the cop that dove through some window and rescued a family. They're not talking about a guy that pulled a kid out of a burning car. All you see is the negative, the negative, the negative. Sure. And then that affects their life. It affects their morale and their families and their kids. And then it just trickles down from there. I mean, it is what kills me. And we see how much money is getting shipped to Ukraine and all these other countries. And I'm veterans. We should be taking care of our veterans, but right there on that same level is our law enforcement officers. Yeah. The pay should be doubled immediately. And I talk to some of these guys in these little rural towns, and you hear what they're making. You're just like, what in the hell? Like, how? And how are you surviving? And I've heard of cops that have second jobs.
Yeah. And that was a big thing for a lot of officers is, you work as much off duty as you can. So now you're already working, 40, 50 hours a week on your regular patrol or whatever role you're doing. For me, it was a lot. And a lot of officers are doing, they're picking up any kind of gig they can off duty. So they're getting time away from their family, holidays, all this stuff. So you're right. It's a lot of stress. It's, and it's hard to be an officer. That was one of the reasons, I got out. I didn't stay for 30, 40 years because I didn't want to turn what's happening. Officers are turning into cynical, like, hateful people by the time they're ending. Not all of them. I'm not. But when you see this stuff constantly and you're constantly getting just belittled and the hate and all these things, and there's plenty of people out there who come up and say thank you for what you do and all this stuff. But sometimes the other voices are just very loud.
And they cut deeper.
And they do. They cut deeper. And you're very appreciative for those that appreciate you. But I'm seeing these officers out here who, man, they give it all, in their whole lives, 30,
Absolutely.
40 years. And then, I mean, they are rightfully though. So they're cynical. They don't want to be around anyone else that's not an officer or their family. Everyone's a shitbag, and it's no fault of their own. It's just how that culture becomes over time, and oftentimes they feel isolated.
Do you think it's because that's all they're dealing with is just the negative?
Yeah.
It's not like firefighters are called, and, oh, lady fell, and they get to go lift her up and rescue a cat out of a tree. I mean, when you get the call, it's something, I'd say, correct me if I'm wrong, 99% of the time something negative is going on.
Yes.
And that just, I mean, it has a chip away at you over 20, 30 years.
It does. It does. It really does. And it just eats at your soul. It just eats at you. And so how do you deal with that? The mental side of that, and then these guys are retiring, and 3 years later they're dead.
Yeah.
Or they're dying, or because what are they doing? They don't have a hobby. They're drinking too much to deal with the stress that they've had their whole life.
They don't have the VA.
No.
That's another thing that blows my mind about law enforcement in this country, that we haven't evolved to match what our now law enforcement are going through. Like, you take a veteran, we went off to war, we signed that dotted line, they go to war, we come back. Cool. And then you sit here and look at these guys, and I mean, some of these guys have been out of Afghan and Iraq 20 years, and they're still struggling just as bad as the day they got back.
True.
Then you take a cop that never gets to turn it off. Out of that 20 years, you might have 4 or 5 deployments overseas, 1 or 2, some guys.
Right.
They come back, they've done their time. A cop, you're in the streets every single day for your whole career, dealing with negative bullshit, and then you're getting out of being a law enforcement officer. There's some charities out there, I get it, but you guys don't have a VA. You don't have these programs. And I'll tell you what, in our organization, when we started our cop program, no one gives a fuck. It is our hardest funding program to raise money for.
Right.
I could throw anything out for any veteran, no problem. The cat missing a fucking foot and bobtail, and people will donate 10 grand like it's nothing.
Sure.
Cops, no one cares. Yeah. Only people that support law enforcement, that from our experience, previous law enforcement, families of law enforcement. That's it. The community does not care about law enforcement officers, but we're not thinking of this. Like, how do we help these cops that just did 20, 30 years of dealing with negative bullshit, getting shit on his whole entire career, then he gets out, and then it's like, oh, cool, have a nice life.
Yeah. No, you're right.
It's sad to think. It's really sad to think about if you really dig down into it. It's like nobody's giving it. I'm sure the community's giving it thought, but as far as civilians that aren't law enforcement related, and the only reason I do is because we help so many of them. The active duty guys get training, and then I just have so many friends and talk to cops, and it's like, God, what do you guys do?
Yeah.
What do you do for a guy that's zipped up a body bag for some little girl, and you got to go home and put a smile on and watch your kids dance, little dance performance, and you got to sit in that audience and put a smile on your face when that's all you're thinking about from that day's work.
Yeah.
And then you're bottling it. And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's a lot of bottling, because you don't want to take that home, and you don't want to put that on anyone else or your family, especially. And so you just take it on and hold it in, and it does build. And then there's a certain culture, right, that comes along with that, and it's you don't talk about it. What do? You go to choir practice. I don't know if you've ever heard of choir practice, but that's 8 a.m. drinking. When the shift's over, you're going to choir practice. It's time to go drink this away.
Okay. And that's what a lot of guys turn to.
That's what a lot of it turns to. Is like, hey, you've been involved in this, you've been involved in that. What it usually turns out to be is, hey, let's go take care of this. Let's get some drinks. And part of that idea is to like talk amongst yourselves, right? But that turns into a lot of war stories and a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of anger, and it's like, then it fuels itself, and next thing you know, there's a bunch of cops getting in a fight because
No
they've
shit.
just sat there and like stewed
Yeah.
in this stuff, this hate, this, you know.
I feel that like with the culture of men who we are these days, and especially with the influencers and all that stuff, and it bugs me a lot when I hear these guys are like, oh, dudes don't talk about it, men don't cry, men don't show feelings, and it drives me nuts because that's what leads you down some really dark paths with alcohol, drugs, domestic abuse, your kids, because these guys because you're not manly enough to go and talk or communicate with your wife or cry, pray, talk. I mean, I feel like this culture we're all built around, especially veterans, law enforcement, it's the non-manly thing to do. And and I'll say it, man, like me, I'll get shit for it, and I don't even give a shit. Learning how to cry just to get it out of me. I mean, because when I lost my brother, and it was the most traumatic shit I've ever been through. It was absolutely horrible. I was there with my dad, my mom, my sister. Whole other level of trauma that I've ever done, and I bottled it. But then once I had to like feel to like to get it out of you, it was night and day of how I felt. And then I see these guys and I talk to these veterans, and they got to be such a manly man about it. Right. It's like, bro, it's okay. Like, it's okay if you got to go to the mountains and just scream, grab a log, and beat the fuck out of a tree. Do it. Yeah. But now I feel like as this culture of who we are, and it's coming a little bit more. But you get these big influencers and they talk about it and how you're not supposed to act like that. You're not supposed to show feelings and emotions. And to me, I think that is the absolute worst thing you can do is bottle that shit, and it just festers and it piles and it piles and it piles. And then you're taking it out on your wife, you're taking it out on your kids, you're losing friends over it because you don't know how to express it. And it sucks.
Yeah. Or worst case, you're in your house shooting out of the door and out of the walls. And I mean, it really does boil down to that. Or you're taking your life because you're just, that it really just eats at the core of who you are. And so,
we're not built for that. We're not built to hang on to that type of stuff. No. It's not healthy. When at the end of the day, it is not healthy to be able to not be able to express and communicate and to talk.
And that's like culture. That culture really breeds. I was in it for 20 years. It really breeds that exact thing. Like, hey, it's cool, man. You good? Of course you're good. It's good. Yeah. I mean, that's it, right? That's the conversation. You good? You need to talk about something? You're good. Of course you're good. Let's go. Next one. Just it's
man,
over.
I don't know why that guy killed himself. He was such a good cop.
Yeah.
Because nobody ever took the time to talk to him about it.
Yeah.
Same thing with these vets.
And they have, you'll hear like departments, because I was part of that, like peer counselors, but it's still the culture is you don't talk about it. That's the deep, they won't say that necessarily out loud, like, man, talk if you need to talk. But the underlying culture of it is you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And you don't share it. You keep it. That's what men do. That's what we do. That's who we are. Thin blue line all the way. And that's fine. I'll support any of them. They're my brothers, all of them. But I also want them to have the help. I want them to talk. I want them to express. I want them to feel. I want them to have hobbies. I want them to know that, like, this isn't life. Your work is not your life. It's your job.
It's just a job.
Maybe it's your career. That's fine. But it's what you do for money. What are you doing outside of that? Are you taking care of yourself, your fitness? Seeing these cops who can barely get in and out of their car, or anyone for that matter, but you can't move. How are you going to fight? How are you going to take care of yourself in a battle? Take care of your health, take care of your mental health, take care of your spiritual health. All of it matters. And it's just, coming from the military, you get inundated into this culture
for sure
of what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to act and who we're supposed to be. And now that this is our identity, this is it. It's not your identity. You're also a father. You're also a mother. You're also a brother.
Thank you for saying this.
An aunt, an uncle, a child. You're a son, a daughter. There's all these things that you are.
Discover
aside them. Find them out.
Discover them.
You're a fisherman. You know, you're a mountain biker, whatever it is you like to do. But some guys just, they don't. I'm telling you, I've literally talked to guys like, hey, man, what do you do for fun? Train. No, I said fun. What is your hobby? I clean my guns. Okay.
See,
What
that's
else?
that's a problem.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Because you're never taking yourself out of the situation to be able to lay your guard down, relax, think about something else, focus on something else. You know, I've had this conversation probably on here where the veteran community, these guys that are they're in the same situation that they were 10, 15 years ago, coming back from war, and it's like how are we still here? And I think a lot of it is because that's their identity.
Yeah.
They're this disabled, grumpy veteran. And that's it. And then you ask them the same questions like, dude, what do you do? Oh, clean my guns. Like, it's like, bro, like, okay, I don't want to be labeled. I don't want my identity to be some just veteran my whole life. I want to be a father. I want to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
I want to be able to help the community. That's what my identity and why I want my identity to be. But some of these guys, I'm just a disgruntled veteran. Disgruntled veteran. That's your identity. That's who your kids are watching you become or who you are. And it's the same thing with all these communities that we're just fed to be, hey, this is who we are. This is our culture. We're going to just suffer through this. And it's like you want to live that life. That's how you're living your life. You got such a short time on this earth in front of your children, to raise your children, to be something. And that's who you choose to be, is this asshole that is just this grumpy veteran, and I'm disabled, and I saw shit overseas, and that's all I'm going to hold on to. Yeah. Me, it's like, fuck that, bro. Yeah, no. I have no problem talking about it. I think it's incredible to talk about it, tell the stories, laugh, cry over it. But, like, who are you now?
Yes.
You've been out since 2008, bro.
Yeah.
And you're, I'm a Marine. Dude, till the day we die, we're going to be Marines. That's who we are.
Yeah.
We never hang it up. Who are you now?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, man.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's sad. It's so sad. But then you get attacked for it.
Yes.
Oh, you got up because of this, or you're different. You don't know what you're talking about, bro. I'm not sitting here dwelling on my shit from 15 years ago.
Exactly.
I love sitting down with vets and law enforcement to talk about old stories. That's how we get to document these things and have these conversations. But like what you're doing now, you're not some SWAT officer sitting at home on your third, fourth marriage because you're miserable and your wife hates you and your kids don't want to be anything around you. Yeah. It's like you have to evolve and you have to just become something new, and identities, they change. You gotta constantly find a new identity. I'd say every 10 years or so, okay, what are we in now? New hobbies, new passions, new friends, new families. Like it's
growing.
Constantly got to grow. Stagnant. That's what's killing these guys is their stagnant life of not wanting to start a new identity, or not knowing how to.
And fearful of it. I mean, there's a lot of fear. What I was mentioning, like getting out. I mean, people just, it was a complete mind-boggling. Like, did not understand. What do you mean? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I can't do anything else but this. That is a lie. Do anything, not anything. I mean, I'm not going to go out here and, I tell people all the time, I'm clearly not going to go out here and be like, hey, I'm going to go be a professional basketball player. It's not going to happen. Yeah. Okay. I know that.
But anything that you're capable of doing.
Anything you're capable of, you can go do it. You can learn. You can do whatever it is you want to do. And that was that place I was at where I'm watching these guys retire and die, and I'm watching these guys that are so cynical. And right as before my exit, it was kind of the last shooting I'd gotten into, and this guy, this felon, we had eyes on him, undercover stuff, dope, gang, guns, all the stuff. See him, he comes out of the house. We got a description, confirmed identity, all these things. So we're there, we're ready to roll. He had gone back in before we could roll up on him, so we're waiting on him to come back out. Comes out, same stuff, same outfit. Hey, let's move. We move on him. He starts firing, shooting at us. Get out, it's seconds, but he's running up the stairs. Of course, it's an apartment complex, so you can't just blast into these windows and doors. So you got to he gets to the top, he turns, he's done. Realizing now it's not even him. It's his brother who is also in the same position. We didn't even know he was there. He's inside. So now his brother's dead because he pulled it and fired at us. And he's also a wanted felon for all the same stuff.
So this guy, he wasn't just an innocent brother. This guy, I mean, he obviously came out
he
shooting
wasn't
at you.
innocent.
Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't innocent. So he goes down. So we now have to do a rescue, knowing that his brother's also inside and armed at the door of his apartment, all this stuff. So we get all that done. And, when you go through these things, you go through these incidents, and people are trying to question like what you do when somebody's shooting at you. And so that's also where some of that cynicism and some of those things come from, where you start, you're just like, it's us against
Everybody.
everyone.
Yeah.
And, you see these things, and you guys know, like, the military's, to me, in my mind, military and law enforcement, we're in the same, the same blood.
For sure.
The stuff that you have to see and the stuff you have to go through. So you see these things replay in your mind, but after that incident, I'm just sitting there thinking, I want to do other things.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be identified as this. And I dang sure don't want to. I mean, honestly, there's another thought. You mentioned it earlier, as we're getting ridiculed, and people are asking questions that they shouldn't even be asking. You're asking me why I shot when someone's shooting at me and I'm identified as a police officer. So there's things like that, and you think, I'll put my life on the line for anybody, but I'm not going to prison for that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go to prison because you think I wasn't doing my job properly.
Somebody that wasn't there reading a report, trying to justify if it was legit or not.
So there's also that aspect of it, and it's tough, that. And I know that there's probably a lot of very similar things that take place in the military, where people are ridiculed over some of the actions that they take. Like, you weren't there, you didn't see it, you don't know.
For sure. Get brought up on war crimes, you're getting charged by people that never even been deployed before.
Right.
Yeah, same shit.
Yeah. So it's such a tough culture to just remain in and stew in.
Yeah. But you knew it wasn't for you at that point?
Well, I knew, because I'd already been taught. My wife and I had already been discussing, like, I knew early on. I knew probably when I started that I'd probably do 20 and out.
Okay.
Just because I was observant enough to see the culture. I could see it immediately and recognized it for what it was. Not that it's not all bad. It's not all terrible. It's just, I knew also that there were just other things I wanted to do in life. I wanted to have a pretty good retirement sitting there waiting, and I do. They double match. I'm not even touching it. It's sitting there gaining 5% compound interest, and I won't touch it until they make me.
Yep.
But having that, but then being able, knowing, like, I'm in my 40s. I can still go have another career. I can still do other things.
Life's just getting started.
Yeah, I'm not locked into something. And people just don't get that. And that goes for a lot of careers. That goes for a lot of jobs. People get stuck in, they just feel like this is where I have to be because I can't do anything else.
That or comfort.
Yeah, and comfort. Yeah.
It's comfort. You get comfortable.
And there's nothing wrong with it.
No, not at all. If that's your thing, do it.
Yeah.
Can't bitch about it, though.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Can't bitch about it.
Can't, but and get out of that. So I do wish there was something more. And that was another reason why I started a life coaching business, was hoping that maybe I have that opportunity to help some of these guys, like, even out of retirement. Because there's a lot of people just feel lost.
For sure.
What do I do
Next
now?
chapter, how do you start it?
Yeah, what do I do with my hands? I don't know. And that's even where a lot of suicides happen later down the road, after they lose their career, because they literally have nothing else.
Yep.
Nothing else. They just sit there and stew and you'll see them. They go to the department and they just hang out. They're retired. They're right back at the department in the little cafe downstairs. That's all they know. That's all they do. What happened? And I'll ask them, like, what are you doing? Oh, just hanging out. All right.
Not going to work.
not gonna work. Let's change that. Let's change the rhetoric.
Let's get the body moving. Let's get your mind working. Yeah. So have you been able to help a lot since going out and now starting your life coaching? I mean, have you been able to have an impact on some of these guys?
I had some when I was there. It's actually pretty difficult.
Really?
It's pretty difficult because a lot of them just, when you get out of that, I think I might be able to do it more outside of my own department.
Okay.
Because I think to some degree, like even there, like people feel almost like you've betrayed them because you left. Mm-hmm. You left the culture.
For sure.
You know, it's like,
isn't that weird?
What?
You could be in the military, in the Marine Corps, you could be the most stellar, squared away Marine. The second you decide that you're done, you're automatically labeled.
Yeah.
Automatically labeled.
Yeah, no, I've got like 2 medals of valor. I've got life-saving awards. I could show you the medals. All the stuff that
turned your back on us. You quit.
Yeah, like, oh, well, I guess you're not one of us now. What happened? What happened to brotherhood?
Like, why?
What are you talking about? Like, I still love you dudes. I still want you. I want the well-being. So I do think, and I know that, military dudes experience that to some degree. And I think that's another part of that loneliness, right? Like, what you thought was like something, so tight, and like you're there, and the moment you're not there, you're out. And so now who do you have?
Nobody.
Well, you don't have the world because they hate what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you don't have them because you're not them anymore. You
got yourself.
You got yourself. And if you don't have something
in a bottle.
more, in a bottle.
And that just spirals.
Yeah, the bottle's easy to get.
I don't understand that mindset in, law enforcement, military communities that brotherhood, rah, rah, rah. The second you're done, now you're not the enemy, but it's just like why? I'm not. Now I'm a turd because I got out, started a company, started a family, started a new life, new chapter. Now I don't know if it's a jealousy thing, an envy thing. I know I've run into that quite a bit. Getting out, making it, doing my own thing, surviving. Yeah. Oh, must be nice. It's not. I mean, it is, but you have no idea the struggles. Us counting pennies to keep lights on at some point. Sure. I had to go back to Afghan to pay my debt off just so we can make it work. Yeah. And it's nice now, but I made that leap, and I think a lot of it is those guys feel trapped, and then they see somebody actually doing it and making it and starting other companies and remarried, starting a new family, happy. And then they're stuck in that bubble, and they're just looking out and like, man, this motherfucker. Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to that.
It does. I think you're right there. It really is so many that I talked to were just like, that was one of the things they said repeatedly was like, I don't even know what that. I don't even understand. I don't know why. What are you talking? It's no different than you can see it in anything. People trying to leave dope, right? There are drugs. They want to get out. They want to stop using. The first thing they do when they get out, they go to rehab, they get out. Who's going to be there to greet them? It's the people that want them to come right back to where they were at. Mm-hmm. And they'll give them all the free dope until they're right back on it. And once they're back in it, okay, pay me. So, I mean, it's just everything, every group, culture, and to some degree, even families do it to one another.
For sure.
Right? Like literal blood families.
For sure.
Why are you moving? Oh, you're just and now you're the outsider, right? Mm-hmm. Like you moved.
Left. You're making money. You're better than us now.
Yeah, you're better than us. Oh, okay, I got you. People are that also comes down to fear. Like I can't, or I don't know how, or I'm too afraid. But if you're doing it, now I'm threatened by it.
Yep.
Why? Like why don't you learn from it? Why don't you come by? And we talk about it. And maybe we talk about like you doing the same thing if you want. If you don't, you're happy.
Let me help you.
Yeah, let me help you. Let's talk through it. What does it look like for you? What are the possibilities? Just have a conversation about it.
It's human nature, but it's that mindset that keeps you in that shitty job, keeps you not starting a new identity and a new life. It's that mindset where you're just stuck. And it's the envy, it's the hate, it's the jealousy, it's the fear. Because, dude, starting something new is scary, especially, you got 20 years in, you're right there ready to retire within 10 years, maybe, whatever. You got it now, but full pension, whatever it comes out to. Same thing with the military, guaranteed paycheck, all medical, dental, your whole family's covered, it's cush.
Yeah.
But you're like, I'm going to give all this up for what? For the unknown? It is scary. And then I think when you see the guy doing it, and you're just like, damn, I'm too scared to do it.
Yeah.
So,
and that's like, I felt it. There was a time where I felt it.
That's part of it. It's part of the growth.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, my wife's like, hey, what do you think about this? And once I knew early on, but then once I'm there and I'm comfortable and, you know, I know everything around me, I know what I'm doing, I'm moving up here, you know, and I've got a lot of clout here, and, you know, I'm the big cheese, you know, this was, and then that conversation, we're like, I don't know. I might have changed my mind, you know, but it's that fear of like,
the unknown.
Know. Yeah. What do I do?
It's the unknown. Yeah.
How do I do it? Where do I start? You know, so it took, you know, I really just had to do a lot of reading, had to just step outside of myself a little bit and outside of my comfort zone, which I was cool with. I'm cool with doing that. And I always tried to stay inundated within the community. I taught fitness classes on the side. I stayed involved in the community in other areas because I knew that I didn't want to be that cynical person. And so I think that helped me push through that fear a little bit to know, like, this isn't who it's not my identity, for one. I am John McDaniel, and I can do a lot more than this.
Yep.
I can do whatever.
Yeah.
It's just, I've got to feed that mindset. And I've got to get in bigger rooms. I got to get around people who think that way. How do I get in rooms with people who think that way?
That's a big one.
You know, and that is a big one. Because if all of us in this room are thinking, well, this is what we do. This is who we are.
Yep,
then that's exactly, nothing's going to change, you know. It's you know, it's the analogy of the cave. You know, if you're facing a wall, whatever you see on that wall is reality. And the moment someone turns you around and says, hey, there's a door there, you can get out of here.
There's the light.
There's the light. What? So if there's no one there to do that, if you're not in those rooms with people who are going to do that, then that's where you stay.
Yep. So what do you got going on now?
So
since getting out, I mean, obviously you started a new chapter of life.
Yeah.
And where is it at now?
So I got out and immediately started doing, I told you, business. So I was doing business coaching.
Okay.
I was the growth guy for a business coaching company. They had kind of spun off, and they were really successful building one area, and then they sold that. So they were kind of almost a new startup. And my wife also worked there. So I got in at growth and doing some of the coaching and traveling and speaking at conferences and things like that. Grew the company about 600%.
Really?
And then, you know, the owner, he had multiple businesses, and he was really focused on some of the other ones. So there just really wasn't a lot of energy being put into that that business. And I could see it. And so we had several conversations, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna do my own thing. So I stepped out of that and started the life coaching. During that time, we had already come up here and gone to the mastermind, the first event that Matt put on here. Not this past summer, the summer before. And really liked it up here. We were always in Colorado. Big hiker, hiked 14,000 foot peaks and fly fish, all the stuff. So we discussed coming up here, made the move. I was buying a gym. So I was in contract to purchase a gym when we moved up here.
What gym?
It's called.
Okay.
So I was in contract to buy that gym. Smaller gym, 5,000 square foot, but I thought I can do some stuff here and there, and you know, and then maybe grow this thing. Just a pretty cool investment. And I moved up here. I'm a week out from closing on this thing. And I hadn't really had a lot of conversations, pretty much almost none, with the owner. And I hadn't been up here. I hadn't even seen it. I sent a guy up here to go look at it and film it and talk. And so I was mainly dealing with the broker. Realized that there was some information in that P&Ls. It was not correct. It was left out. And so and this was from the owner, so he was very honest with me. And so I was like, look, I got to go back to the drawing board. So me and the wife sat down. We spent a weekend crunching numbers, doing stuff. Just like, no, we're not. This is really changes the future projections of this thing.
Yeah.
The valuation. So I was like, called my attorney. Hey, draft a letter. We're done. We're out. So got everything back from that. It's fine. No harm, no foul. But now I got to switch gears a little bit. So had the life coaching. And we just started a fractional operations.
What's that?
So companies, any business, like if you're going to be a window washer,
okay,
you start your business, it's probably chucking a truck, out doing his thing. He has to hire, eventually he gets enough business, got to hire one or two or three. Over time, that's fine. But at some point between usually around $500,000, $1 million, you begin to realize like you've got to figure out some systems and processes.
Okay.
You know,
as far as scaling?
Yeah.
Okay.
How are you going to scale this thing out? You know, what the heck are KPIs?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do I set goals? What does that even mean? You know, like what software do I need? How do I find it? Any of this stuff. So, but they're usually busy doing the thing still, running their company and usually doing the thing. So it's very busy. And they don't have the time or the know-how to do it. So fractional operations, you can't pay a full-time operations person to come in and do all that for you. Or you don't really have the need for a full-time operator, but you need help. You need the stuff.
Okay.
So we can come in and actually help people set up what they need, their systems and processes, and scale out. So we can do it on a one-time basis and set you up for the year. We can do check-ins now and then, or we can come in a fractional role, like 10 hours a week.
What's this business called?
Forged Strategic Ops.
Got it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Just kicked that off. So that's the second business. And then I'm also a worship pastor.
Good for you.
So, yeah. Started that. I used to do that a long time ago. It's always been a passion of mine.
What church?
Dry Creek Community Church.
I don't know that.
It's out in Hidden Springs.
Okay.
So we actually meet in, I don't know if you've ever been out to Hidden Springs.
Yeah,
that restaurant out there. Was it Spring House?
Right when you pull in. Little, it's got
Spring
the
House,
park.
and it's got Rooted, the coffee shop.
Yeah.
Same owners.
So you're talking small congregation out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
We got, I mean, it's I don't know, between 100 and 150 people. So we meet in there, and we got invited out there and attending. I saw a need and kind of felt the prodding, you know, hey, you need to say something. And so I stepped into that, I just volunteered, and then they were like, hey, we'd really like you to do this. Here's what the role looks like. You know, can you do this? And I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Good for you.
So that was good. And so doing that, and I teach a couple fitness classes here and there, and just because I enjoy that. I love being in that atmosphere. People like getting pumped up, and do a little personal training that also kind of coincides with my life coaching and stuff like that. So yeah.
Good for you, man.
A lot of stuff. It's a lot of moving parts, but
it's how I feel a lot of guys like us to get out. That's how, you know, when you start those new chapters, it's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Some of them get lucky and they just fall into something and that's it. But like for us, we got 15 pokers in the fire right now, trying to get rid of a couple and, you know, line things out. And that's just life, though. Yeah. I mean, and that's the excitement, and that gets you out of your comfort zone, and you feel that stress again, which makes you feel alive again. You know, if you're not, I mean, for me at least personally, like you start feeling stagnant. Yeah. You know, I went stagnant for a few years, and it just, you know, you fall into it. Yeah. You get comfortable. When I mean stagnant, comfortable. You're not growing, you're not changing, you're just riding that wave. And for me, and I'm sure you're the same, it's just, you can only ride it for so long, and you got to look for the next one.
Yeah, it doesn't work, and I get bored, man.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to have something keeping me busy, and if I don't, I could promise you what's going to happen. I'm going to turn to the bottle,
get in trouble,
I'm going to turn to something else. You know, I mean, it's just human nature, I think, to some degree. Like I'm going to do something I'm not supposed to do. So keep me busy.
Yeah.
You know, and my wife will say the same thing.
Same.
Keep him busy.
Same. That's you need something good. You go next project. Yeah. She says it all the time. You're sitting around too much. You're gonna get yourself in trouble. Go get on a project. Well, dude, I really appreciate it. you coming on and sharing some of your stories and just life and as a law enforcement officer. I guess a question leaving or wrapping this up is, if you had a message for any law enforcement officers that are looking to get out or recently out, what would be some encouragement for them?
Man, I would say step out of that comfort zone. Get away from it. Like, get out. If you're looking to get out, set the fear aside the best you can.
Mm-hmm.
Just explore. Before you get out, go try something. Start a small business. Before you even get out, start a small business. I mean, you're already working your butt off anyway. You're picking up side jobs and all this other stuff. Get out, do something, build something for you and see what it's like. See if you even enjoy it, because you don't know until you do it. So if you're looking to get out, see what's out there, explore, ask the questions, go and talk to people, start something new. Before I got out, I started a little t-shirt business. Why? Just to do it, just to see what it was like to actually physically fill out the paperwork. What do the taxes look like? How does this work? I didn't lose money on it.
Yeah.
I ended up closing that down because it was really just kind of an experiment, but I wanted to see, like, what is this like? It didn't cost me anything. I got all my money back. So if you're that person, man, just get out there and try it. Just try something. And if you're the guy that's recently out, you've retired, or maybe something pushed you out, don't feel isolated. Man, there are plenty of people out here who are not cops or are cops or military or not military. There's a whole world full of people out here who they want to know you,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to know them, and they want to hear your story, and they want to pull you into a new story. That's the most important. Get in bigger rooms.
Yep.
Get in rooms with people who are looking forward. They're not looking in the mirror at the reflection back at themselves. They're not looking in the rearview mirror. They're looking forward. They're looking ahead, and they're looking for something else. Get in bigger rooms where people talk about bigger things, not just the war stories, not just the stuff that they did once upon a time. What about the things they're going to do?
Mm-hmm.
What about the things you're going to do? Find hobbies, and talk to somebody. It doesn't have to, I'm a life coach. You want to talk to me? You can talk to me. Forge Phoenix. That's my company. But talk to anybody. Talk to somebody about those things that you've kept bottled in. Have a conversation, cry, release it, get through it, work through it, whatever you need to do to get yourself from point A to point B and so on and so forth. Continue moving, because the moment you just set and stew in that loneliness or that depression or even if you're not depressed or lonely, but that spot where you have nothing else to look forward to, that's a dangerous place to be. And so I would say, get out. That's when you better get out and go do something. Better go talk to somebody. And I have no doubt, like, if they're watching this and they're hearing this, it's got to be a start, because you're doing something cool here. And I appreciate you having me on the show. I think this is great, and I think this is a great message to get out to people. Like, if you're listening to this, there's a reason. People don't listen to podcasts for no reason. They don't, they don't listen to, generally, from what I've experienced, is they're starting to seek something. They want to hear what people have to say. So if you're hearing this, there's something. There's a bug. There's something that's rolling around in your mind. So roll with it. And I have no doubt, like, you're going to find somebody. If you need some help with that, holler, give a shout.
I got one last question.
Yeah.
How important has faith been through this journey, transitioning out to now? And
It's been really important, very important for me personally. There's a whole separate story about faith that starting with childhood, because my parents weren't religious, but I had to sneak out to go to church and get beatings for that, and so there's a separate story to that. But faith has played a pivotal role through my entire life, and until you experience it, until you pay attention to it and want to pay attention to it, you won't recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me personally, I wouldn't be the person I am. I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for God, if it wasn't for my faith in the Lord and the journey. And there's so many people that come around. They're there, they know the Lord. They're there, and they're ready to listen. they're ready to. You want to cry on their shoulder, you can cry on their shoulder. You want to go out and shoot some guns and cry on their shoulder, we can do that too. You know, you do whatever you want. Yeah. But faith is, man, it is pivotal for me in my journey.
Good.
And it's going to continue to be.
Awesome, man.
Very important.
Thank you. I really appreciate coming on, sharing this advice, stories, time, and it's been really cool to get to know you. I'm sure we'll be seeing you more at more of these events, and
Absolutely.
I definitely want to. We got to grab some lunch and just shoot the shit off of this. So I definitely like to get to know you more, and this was fun.
It's fun, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you. Thanks, dude.
Thanks.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
That was awesome.